I now convene the December 7th and 8th, 2023 meeting of the Commission on Teacher Credentialing. Will the recording secretary please call the roll?
Danette Brown,
Here.
Catherine Williams Brown,
Here.
Jose Cardenas,
Present.
Cheryl Cotton,
Here.
Juan Cruz,
Here.
Christopher Davis,
Present.
Michael De La Torre,
Present.
Anna Marie Francois, Makita Gwynno Shire,
Present.
Megan Gross,
Here.
Johanna Harwick,
Present.
Susan Aradia,
Present.
Bonnie Clapp,
Present.
Ira Lit,
Present.
Monica Martinez,
Here.
Shireen Pabri,
Present.
David Simmons,
Here.
Kimberly Wise Smith.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Commissioner Heredia, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? I would like to remind everyone about the meeting procedures before we get to today's agenda. This meeting is being conducted at the Commission office and via teleconference. We have commissioners participating from the Commission building and also via Zoom. The public has the option to attend the general session of the meeting at the Commission office or participate remotely through Zoom webcast or U.S. toll-free phone number. For those participating from the Commission office, the microphones must be turned on before you start to speak by pushing the button and then turned off once you're finished. You will know the microphone is on when the indicator light shows green. The microphones for individuals who are attending via teleconference have been muted to eliminate any background noise that may hinder others from hearing what is being said. Commissioners and presenters can unmute yourself, but please mute your microphone after you are done speaking. Commissioners attending the meeting via Zoom that would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Because this is a hybrid meeting, we will need to conduct each vote by roll call. We would like to ask the members of the public who attend the meeting via Zoom and would like to make public comment to check their Zoom identification. Your Zoom identification is the name used when logging into the meeting. It is important that the Zoom identification is accurate so we can call on you appropriately during public comment. Next, we will cover the public comment procedures. The committee chair will announce when the public comment period is open during the presentation of the agenda item and ask for anyone who wishes to comment to notify the meeting moderator. Agenda item 1A is the approval of the October 2023 minutes. We will now open for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We have no public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do I have a motion to approve the October 2023 commission meeting minutes?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Davis. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Heredia. Any discussion? All right. Well, there's recording secretary. Please call for the vote.
Aye. Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton,
Aye.
Juan Cruz,
Aye.
Christopher Davis,
Aye.
Michael De La Torre,
Aye.
Makita Gwynno Shire,
Aye.
Megan Gross,
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Susan Aradia, Bonnie Clapp,
Aye.
Ira Lit,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Our next item is 1B, approval of the December 2023 agenda. Commissioners, I'd like to start the Educator Preparation Committee no later than 10:15, so please keep that in mind for your comments and your reports. We will now open for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
Any public comments? We do not have any public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do I have a motion to approve the December 2023 agenda?
So moved.
Commissioner Davis, do I have a second? Commissioner Brown, thank you. Any discussion? Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Brown,
Aye.
Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton,
Aye.
Juan Cruz,
Aye.
Christopher Davis,
Aye.
Michael De La Torre,
Aye.
Makita Gwinnett Shire,
Aye.
Megan Gross,
Aye.
Johanna Howard,
Aye.
Susan Aradia,
Aye.
Bonnie Clark,
Aye.
Ira Litt,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Agenda item 1C is approval of the December 2023 consent calendar. We will now open for public comment. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
We do not have any public comments.
Thank you. The public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any items they would like to consider in closed session? Yes, Commissioner De La Torre.
Actually, I have some recusals I'd like to announce.
Okay.
So I like to recuse myself from item number 7, Jose Cervantes, item 13, Forrester Wood, item 26, Lovall, item 29, Martinez, item 30, McDonald, item 42, Orozco, item 43, Pertel, item 44, Ray, item 48, Shin, item 53, Weinstock, item 56, Boyd, item 61, Park, item 65, Farmer. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
I'd like to pull item number 7, Jose Cervantes.
Thank you. Commissioner Klatt.
I would like to recuse myself from item 65, Farmer.
I'm sorry, who else? Johanna.
I'd like to pull number 34, Nicole Mercer. Thanks.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis.
I'd like to recuse from item number 4, Bura.
Other commissioners? Okay. Do I have a motion to approve all remaining items on the consent calendar? Commissioner De La Torre,
So moved.
second? Commissioner Brown, thank you. Any discussion? Okay. Will the recording secretary please call for the vote?
Danette Brown,
Aye.
Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton,
Aye.
Juan Cruz,
Aye.
Christopher Davis,
Aye.
Michael De La Torre,
Aye.
Makita Gwinnett Shire,
Aye.
Megan Gross,
Aye.
Johanna Howard,
Aye.
Susan Aradia,
Aye.
Bonnie Clark,
Aye.
Ira Litt,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. Good morning again, commissioners, staff, and colleagues. 'Tis the season for gratitude, and in this spirit, I want to thank all the commissioners for your thoughtful and caring work over this past year, and for the work that you do every day in your schools, offices, and community spaces to support California students and educators. I also want to express my gratitude for our colleagues who attend every meeting here in person at the Commission's building or remotely to provide testimony and input to our work. You are valued partners, and we look forward to our continued collaboration in the future. I also want to give my heartfelt thanks to the Commission staff, and I'm going to look at each and every one of you if I can, and to our Executive Director, Dr. Mary Vixie Sandy. This has been quite the year on so many dimensions. Mary, you and your team have worked diligently, thoughtfully, and with heart, all in service of our students and educators. And on behalf of all of us, I thank each and every one of you. While this is a season of gratitude and celebration, we end this year heartbroken and horrified by the Israeli-Hamas war that began on October 7th, that is impacting both Israelis and Palestinians. As educators and citizens, we are all trying to sort our way through the emotional, moral, and ethical questions that are provoked by this war. This latest crisis reminds us that we do indeed live in a global world, and the horrific war in Gaza is impacting our students and colleagues in both PK-12 and higher education. We are all grappling with how to respond to Islamophobia and anti-Semitism, and foremost, how to ensure the safety of our students and educators. I have found comments by two educators to be helpful to me as I have reflected on the current situation. Dr. Bettina Shea, president of CCTE and CSULB faculty member, reminds us that as teacher educators who care deeply about children and families, we are called upon to meet this moment with courage, compassion, and care for the children and families impacted by this time of global crisis. She speaks of the need to embody and enact humanization in our work. This requires us to engage with one another in ways that recognize our shared humanity and be willing to listen to and center the voices of those most impacted by contexts of harm, by loss, and by trauma. Dr. Eddie Glau Jr., theologian and scholar of African American Studies at Princeton University, also reminds us to keep track of the humanity of people. As a scholar and activist, he thinks it is his, and I would add our responsibility in this moment to keep track of the humanity of people so that people don't lose it in the face of their efforts to respond to the horror of October 7th. He reminds us that we must all bear witness to the conditions under which human beings can indeed become monstrous. Given our collective vision to create learning opportunities that promote each student's academic, social, emotional, and physical growth, and given our guiding principles to advance equity and inclusion and diversity to ensure the safety and well-being of all of our students and educators, I ask that we collectively take a moment to pause and reflect on the impact this tragedy is having on the children and youth on both sides of the conflict in the Middle East and here at home. Thank you. Executive Director Sandy.
Good morning, commissioners and members of our communities of interest. Really happy to be back in this room with all of you. I've missed you, and I'm glad to have our final meeting of the year here before us, and it's going to be a good meeting. A lot of very important work to report on and to discuss and plan for the future. I'd like to make a few introductions. I'm not sure that any of these people are in the room, but at least you'll know their names when you see them. William Walker started work with us in October 24th as a Staff Services Manager 2 in the Division of Professional Practices. William comes to us from the Board of Chiropractic Examiners as an enforcement manager and brings numerous years of investigative experience to join our team in DPP. Commissioner Hartwig, I know this is a question you ask every time we present a report on professional practices. How are we doing? Are we resourced adequately? And here is Exhibit A. William Walker joined the staff, and we are continuing to fill positions as they become vacant. Secondly, I'd like to introduce Julie Holmes, who started with us on November 28th as a consultant in teacher preparation and research, program evaluation and research. She's working with the performance assessment team. She's new to state service and comes to us with 15 plus years in public education and the nonprofit sector. Finally, I'd like to introduce Sarah DeVore, who started on November 29th as an attorney in the legal office. Sarah is new to state service and previously worked as an attorney at the Children's Law Center of California. So good news, and we are happy to welcome these members of our team. Yesterday, I had the pleasure of attending Learning Policy Institute convening over at the Sawyer Hotel, which was taking stock of California's March to Equity, the local control funding formula at 10. It's really hard to grapple with. It's been 10 years since we started the local control funding formula, right? Seems like just yesterday, right? Okay, thank you, because that's my sense of 10 years. Wow. It was an amazing walk through history and vision for the future. We had on the first panel that presented and discussed kind of the retrospective, we had former Governor Jerry Brown, Ana Mato Santos, who was the former cabinet secretary for Governor Brown, and also former director of Department of Finance, John Affelt, managing attorney from Public Advocates, Michael Kirst, the former president of the California State Board of Education, moderated by Linda Darlene Hammond. And if we can get hold of the video from that session, it is just a wonderful retelling of the story and the strategy, where the vision came from, and how this amazing team marched us forward to do something extraordinarily hard, which is change the system as fundamentally as the local control funding formula did. And it was just brilliantly done. Governor Newsom was also available on video, and Assemblymember Marsucci and others were there. Martha Hernandez, who's the executive director of Californians Together, one of the themes that she hit, and I think many others did as well. Lamont Jackson, the superintendent from San Diego Unified School District, also really hit this theme, is that we are a key issue for improving schools is the quality of the teaching and education workforce. And that was a recurring theme throughout. One of the high-level findings from a study, and Rucker Johnson from UC Berkeley was also there, and he presented the findings from this study. One of the key findings here is that the analyses show that LCFF-induced funding increases significantly improved academic achievement for every grade and subject assessed. It reduced grade repetition, it enabled lower suspension rates, and increased the likelihood of students graduating from high school and being college ready. It's amazing. I remember coming to work here in this position on November 1st, 2011. And as I was considering whether in the midst of a terrible recession, this was the time really to leave my comfort level at the University of California and come back to work. And when I looked at this lineup of people and understood their mission, their vision, their drive, I wanted to be part of that team. And it's been an amazing decade of promoting and pursuing equitable conditions for schooling. I also want to draw your attention to your strategic plan, which is in a slightly better published form. And I think we've got copies in the back for other members of the public who are interested. This is our step into the future. This is our frame for how we're going to advance equity, inclusion, and diversity in our work. And I'm really proud of this work. It took us a while to get to this product, but I think we landed in a brilliant place, in a place that is right in tune and very well aligned with what our next 10 years are going to be about as we continue to pursue equity in our schools. So that is my report for this morning, and I turn it back to you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mary. Do any commissioners have items to report? Yes, Commissioner De La Torre.
I just would like to report that certification day is coming for our national board candidates. It will be this Saturday.
Cool.
So there's a lot of nervous tension in the air for so many teachers in the state. And thanks to the subsidy that California has granted so many teachers in our state, I saw a surge in applicants and a surge in candidates. So I'm expecting a surge in newly certified teachers come this Saturday. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm gonna rush them to sign up for the incentive because that window closes in January. So they've got a limited window to sign up for that $25,000 bonus. So I'm very excited about that. Just wanted to share that with all of you.
I can tell there's such joy on your face, Michael.
Oh, this is the culmination of all our work.
I
in
know.
board certification. So
Yeah, congratulations to you and to
very excited for the children of California
Yeah.
because board certified teachers have a great impact on all students. And study after study has shown that.
Yeah.
So I'm very excited.
Thank you
Thank
for sharing that. I'm looking around. Commissioner Brown, then Commissioner Cotton, and then Commissioner Davis.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. You know, as a member, as the commissioner representing the California community colleges, I feel sometimes that I'm the early childhood person, not just the community college person. I just wanted to let you know that the community colleges are working diligently as an institution of higher education to collaborate with all the institutions of higher education around curriculum alignment. And if anyone knows about curriculum, they know that aligning curriculum across systems is really tricky, but really important for students who are interested in pursuing their education and for us getting a career in education and going into teaching. But the other two things that I wanted to mention that I can't help but tell you is as a commissioner who's working with this group around early childhood education, the ECE community circles have been absolutely outstanding. And talk about inclusion. They've even expanded into some focus groups, a particular focus group for LEAs, a particular focus group for community colleges, and on. And it's just extraordinary. And it's a way they've brought in so many more voices of people who are not only doing the work, but want to expand our work for our younger citizens. In addition, the Child Development Teaching Permit Work Group is incredibly diverse this time. And so we're hearing lots of voices from people that provide education and caring education for young children to figure out how we can work that. Of course, we know the PK-3 credential is being built, and there's a clinical practice group that's going to be meeting, which clinical practice are the skills. They're the teaching skills. We need the knowledge, we need the skills. And then two other things that I just briefly wanted to mention about advocacy that I think is really exciting. One of them is that there's an international educational conference that's coming up. I think it's today and tomorrow in Istanbul, about teacher preparation across the planet. And our Renee Marshall is going to represent us and talk about the California teacher preparation system, particularly as it's moving to asset-based competencies and inclusive of ECE. And then the Hunt Institute, who is, it's a collaboration private group that works with Stanford and Harvard, is doing, has built now, they've been doing educational policy advocacy for a long time, and their focus is on state legislation and legislators. And they've added an early childhood piece that they've been working on this year. And so they have an ECE policy academy of, I think, 26 state legislators. And that group is at Palo Alto at Stanford next week. They wanted voices from the field. And so I'm honored and humbled and a little overwhelmed that I was asked to be the moderator and to put together a small group of practitioners, family child care, a preschool teacher, and a director. And we're going to be able to talk and advocate directly to legislators across the country. And it's overwhelming, but it's exciting to be able to have those who are making the policy decisions listen and hear and ask for the voices of those who are closest to our children, who do the teaching, and the families. So it's going to be exciting. Busy time as we were talking. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Commissioner Brown. I can't think of anyone else better to moderate that panel than you. Commissioner Cotton?
Good morning. I will be brief this morning. First off, good morning, commissioners. It's wonderful to see you all again. I do want to highlight that since our last meeting, our State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tony Thurman, hosted a summit, a call to action, building a better future for California students experiencing homelessness. I just wanted to lift that up. It was an amazing opportunity for educators, parents, legislators to come together and address the problem and start to talk about what can we do to support our students who are experiencing homelessness and their families. And that was just exciting times. I just wanted to raise that. I also want to just remind the group that we are working diligently on our literacy roadmap and very excited about kind of bringing that cohesion and that common focus and common voice to the literacy work that we're doing across the state. So that is coming soon. And then finally, just to National Board, I want to share some numbers and some information for you, Commissioner De La Torre. The California National Board for the Professional Teaching Standards, they have the incentive program and the subsidy program. As of Friday, December 1st, we've received 1,328 subsidy program applications. So we've also received some of those are returning, but because they need to continue and finish up their work, but it is exciting. We've received 77 applications for the 2023-24 incentive program, and we're expecting that number to increase, knowing that the application period closes in January. So encouraging folks to, if you know someone, please encourage them to apply either for the subsidy or the incentive program. There are, 1,542 from cohorts 1 and 2 that are continuing to work in high priority schools and receiving that annual $5,000 award payment. And then Assembly Bill 908 that was signed by the governor expands the National Board Incentive Program to teachers at high priority schools to receive an award of $495 to obtain their maintenance of certification, which is a process that they need to review their National Board certification. So very good work, very exciting things that's happening around National Board. And with that, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Francois, I see you, and you'll be after Commissioner Davis, please.
Good morning, everyone. And I want to start by saying, yes, this is a nervous time for all of our candidates that are pursuing their National Board certification. Score releases this weekend, and I have about 120 candidates that are looking for scores this weekend. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. Also, I had an opportunity to go to a Head Start dinner of sorts with Commissioner Brown and Dr. Van Kulen. I was being honored there, and Dr. Jean Van Kulen is world renowned for her advocacy for Head Start, but also in 10 different places in the United States, including territories, she wrote those Head Start grants, and she was granted almost all of them. And so a lot of children that were in desperate need of the services, families that were in desperate need of the care and the services were met through this program. And I was afforded an opportunity to just stand and talk with her for a moment. And, you know, we lamented about something, and I think it was an important point that, you know, and I wanted to bring it to everybody that I can possibly talk about this to. Both of our name badges said doctor before our names. And that was important, I think we were the only two African Americans there at this event. And so it was like, hey, we found each other, right? And we were talking to each other, you know, very respectfully. And it was amazing to see how many people would come up and try to shake our hands and then call us by our first names, even though our badges literally said the doctor on it. And I remember Dr. Van Kulen looked at one particular person and said, "Excuse me, do I know you?" And that person was like, "Well, no, I'm just introducing myself." She goes, "Well, you will address me as doctor. I worked really hard for the 10 doctorate degrees that I have." And she was very, very direct. And then when that person walked away a little offended, she looked at me and said, Why didn't you correct that person? And I said, I never thought of it the way you did. She goes, I am older than you. And I remember a time when African Americans could not earn this title in most places, but she said now that we can, and it's rare to find us in these spaces, especially in professional spaces, it doesn't matter what people's reactions are. Command the respect. And so have people address you as Dr. Davis in those professional settings, because having them almost dehumanize you or try to tear down that accomplishment is what is being done with renaming you or naming you something that isn't your professional title when you're in that professional space. So I walked away with some pretty humbling advice from such a world-renowned expert in early childhood. And so that was one of the many takeaways from that beautiful event. And I was very, very honored to be part of that group. Also, I'm part of the National Board Resource Center, and we work with Dr. Litt here at Stanford, and we've just expanded our program, and we've added a couple of new cohorts at UCLA and then also at Stanford, especially our BIPOC cohorts. And so we have 1, 2, 3, I believe, right, Adam? 3 working at Stanford and 2 at UCLA. 4 wow, okay, 4 at Stanford, 2 at UCLA. And so our cohorts are cohorts almost exclusively of people of color, our BIPOC cohorts there. Our larger Stanford program, we're also working with about 300-ish candidates from all walks of life from across the United States. So again, most of these people are looking for scores this weekend and still rivaling you. Right. The last thing I want to say in closing is that I was able to see Chair Greenwich-Shire receive a beautiful award. And it was just the most wonderful experience to have Commissioner Pavry do that wonderful introduction. And I got to sit with Commissioner Pavry and her husband, and I got to meet all of Chair Greenwich-Shire's family. And I got to meet so many people that I actually didn't know at LA State, but I saw their faces and they were very familiar because they worked there when I was a student there back in the 90s. So it was like a homecoming of sorts. And so I had a great time. And again, congratulations on that beautiful award. We appreciate all the service at LA State for our teachers and the children of California. And with that, I conclude.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Francois?
Good morning, colleagues. I'm so sorry I can't be there with you today physically, but I am here with you in spirit and in love. I want to echo Commissioner Davis's congratulations to you, Marquita. I have had the privilege of working alongside you for many, many, many years. Ooh, I shouldn't have added that last many. And it has been nothing but a growth and learning experience. I value so much your collegiality and depend so much on your experience and wisdom. And so I think I speak for all of us in the field of educator preparation that we are better and stronger and more thoughtful because of you. I have 3 items I'd like to share with you all. So much good stuff happening in educator preparation, development, and support. And I'm going to add 3 things. The first is I'm happy to announce that the application window for the REACH grants have been extended for a couple more days. So if you know folks who want to be part of the Race Education and Healing Community Healing Network, please check out the website at the UC Berkeley School of Education or the UCLA Center for UCLA Center for Transformation, the Transformation of Schools website to get more information. For those of you that are not familiar with REACH, REACH is led by UC Berkeley School of Education and the UCLA Center for the Transformation of Schools. And the purpose of REACH is to help schools and districts reduce out-of-school suspensions for students in TK through 12th grade and to promote alternatives to punitive practices. And so to that end, the way that they're going to do that is that the REACH network would work across California with public and charter schools, local education agencies, community-based organizations, and universities to develop alternatives to out-of-school suspensions and engage directly with teachers and school leaders to establish public schools as hubs of racial and community healing. And the grants that are up to $25,000 each will allow for school sites and districts to test out innovative models that promote positive relationships, healthy learning conditions, and center on evidence-based alternatives to punitive practices and policies in school. So reach out to me if you want more information. I'll be happy to send out the latest flyer. Some other exciting work that's coming out of a collaboration between UC Berkeley, UCLA, and the California Subject Matter Projects through the 21st Century California School Leadership Academy are 3 new research briefs. The first is the 21 CSLA Professional Learning Brief, which is on equity-centered leadership coaching. That might be of interest to you all. Another brief is on a webinar that was given, I think it was about a month, 2 months ago, on educating for a diverse democracy. And the final brief is from the UC Berkeley Leadership Program Policy Brief, and it's entitled Preparing California Principals for Implementation of UTK Lessons from Other States. And I know, Commissioner Brown, that brief will make your heart sing. So check that one out. And then, you know, as I was talking to some of my colleagues about the commissioner's report and what we wanted to say as a UC system, the teacher education director at UC Berkeley, at UC Santa Barbara, Tori Harvey, she reminded me that as we give these updates about the exciting, important initiatives and programs that we're offering educators across the state to improve the quality of teaching and learning for all of our young people, oftentimes we forget that it is our graduates of our programs that go out, and they are the ones who move that work forward. They are the future of advanced teaching and learning in K-12 school. So in the spirit of that, I want to lift up a couple of names of alumni from the University of California system who have been awarded or recognized, I should say, for their contributions to the field. And because Tori at UC Santa Barbara brought this to my attention, with love, by the way, I'm going to focus on a couple of folks from UC Santa Barbara, graduates of UC Santa Barbara. The first is Greg Wolf, who was named Teacher of the Year for California, one of only 5 California Teachers of the Year. He is an alum of UC Santa Barbara. Ryan Hessel and Sam Lambert were named Santa Barbara County Office of Education Distinguished New Teachers this year. Tiffany Gonzalez was named the Santa Barbara County Office of Education Distinguished Mentor. And finally, Sonia Aguia was named the National Association for Bilingual Education Teacher of the Year. These are all products of the systems that we as a commission help to support. And I just want to lift up their names and thank them for their service. So concludes my report.
Thank you, Commissioner Francois. What a great addition to these reports to hear about our graduates and the impact they're having in their communities. So I'm looking at the other IHE leads. Game on. Next time. Commissioner Pavre.
Good morning, everyone. Kudos to the UC alum who are doing such amazing things, and to all of our teachers, alums of all of our schools who are really making an impact on our young people. I also wanted to add my congratulations to our distinguished educator, Marquita Grino-Shaya. I will not go into too much detail about all the wonderful contributions you have made. Another distinguished alum of the CSU, 3-time alum of Cal State LA. I wanted to share two updates from the CSU. We have on our agenda discussion around the literacy certification. The CSU Center for the Advancement of Reading and Writing has been convening faculty and creating resources to assist our campuses, provide technical assistance as they do this significant and very heavy lift of revising all of our programs in light of the new literacy standards. So they have convenings coming up as well as sharing a lot of resources to leverage the amazing work underway in the system. We're also going to be leading 2 convenings in the spring to build capacity around the PK3 credential. We have a small grant from the Silver Giving and Easing Simons Foundation to do a convening for our CSU faculty, community college partners, as well as the LEA partners and advocacy groups around early literacy. That will be in February, and then we will be holding another convening in April around early numeracy and STEAM. So excited about the work underway, the capacity building, the idea sharing, and the resources that will just help us improve our educator preparation programs. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Pabry. Other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Whitesmith.
Good morning. I too can't be outdone with my love for Marquita, so I too want to congratulate you. I want to throw that out there. And I've only known her a few years, just kidding. It's been many, but not many. It's the month of December, and so I just wanted to call out my respects and love for all of those who celebrate in different ways and in their own ways, and just acknowledge the difference and to celebrate that for all of us here, especially during this time when there's so much dissension. It's the love and the cultural sharing that brings us all together, and the ability to engage in that freely is really important for us to remember and keep close to our hearts. I represent the independent private not-for-profits, the AICCU group. And again, I always love to remind people that 75% of the privates in the state of California are actually minority serving institutions or emerging minority serving institutions, specifically HSIs. And so as a former foster youth, I also know that during this time, it tends to be very difficult for us. I remember spending lots of Decembers and Christmases at home by myself. And so in thinking about that, I love to share that many of our privates have very specific programs for foster youth where 100% of their tuition is taken care for, and that they are cared for during these times where they might not have a home to go back to. So I just want to, again, chime in that we are here as a resource, as a support, as a partner with all of our partners, and also blessings to all of you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitesmith. Other commissioners? I'm looking around the table before, yes, Commissioner Heredia, before we go to our liaisons.
Thank you. Watching the clock here. So I think we should have another party for Commissioner Gunner Shire so that we all can celebrate her because it sounds like it was a fantastic evening and just probably, well, not probably, but a well-deserved honor. So congratulations. And all right, everyone. So the end of the school year, well, I think of things in terms of semesters, not years, but I have, I kind of go back to my professor days, but in school board life, so December is always a special time because it's when we all come together at the annual conference. There are 5,000 school board members in the state of California, the largest electoral group that is elected by their communities. So we keep trying to raise our voices, with those numbers. And in our annual conference, we had approximately 3,600 people. Our numbers were up from after the COVID, but still, I think we've had more in the past, but it was a great conference. So it was a conference of 3 days that focused on cyberbullying, COLA, LCAP, LCFF, dual enrollment, declining enrollment, teacher shortage, social emotional services for families and students, budget, foster youth, and homeless students, and many, many more. And Commissioner Cruz was also there. It's nice to see a friendly face in the room, but it was 3 days of intense, just get learning as much as you could, on top of what you already know and you think you know about your school district. But it seems like the items that seemed surfaced to the top are the social emotional well-being of students and families. And it's just almost beyond the capacity of what schools can do. I mean, in my district, we are very lucky. We have like a converted hotel where we're in partnership and we house the homeless students in our community. We have a Joey's Food Locker, which is food locker and clothing locker. We're having a brand new the B. Terry Burns clinic that will open right across the street from the high school. It's already in one location, it's moving. So we're doing our best, but we are also a district that has the resources to do that. Not exceptionally a lot of money there, but there is money. Unlike those school districts who are in rural communities and find it really difficult and struggling with teachers. So TK was another, TK and preschool. Everyone is trying to figure out how they are going to expand, on their campuses. Portables are costly, trying to get rooms for these little kids with their special little bathrooms, and make sure, and they have cute little bathrooms in the new school too. Yeah, I know. In one of our new schools, it's really cute. But trying to meet the needs of the little kids, knowing that in 2025, some of these kids, our kids could be there as early as the age of 3. And that challenge, and looking at the credentialing, looking at, the teachers that are in preschool, how do we help the teachers in preschool move into that K-3? And so just want you to know, Commissioner Brown, I had that conversation yesterday with the superintendent of my district. So that was a good conversation. But we also had 3 speakers that I just want to highlight real quick. One was Mark Pena, who is a single dad raising 2 boys, millennials, and his experience. But he focuses on, just trying to get kids engaged in school. And so he's a national speaker, invited by many, many people all over the country to speak. But he said something, and Commissioner Cruz and I were talking about this. He asked us to consider why we say we are preparing students for college and career, to be college and career ready. And he challenged us to rethink that term. And this was based on the experience with his own son, who had a 1.5, or was it 1.5 GPA, and could care less, and knew how many days he could be absent from school and would stay home and get stomach aches and everything else until he did this for a while, until that child walked into a class, and it was a preview class that was going to kind of be a preview of what he was going to get, and found out finally after a year or 2 years, this poor man went through, discovered what he was going to do, and that was going to be an engineer, right? I keep looking at him because I want to make sure I got all this. I was trying to do other stuff backstage as this man was talking. So he asked us to consider using the term just career and finding out what kids want to do in life. What career do you want, and what will it take to get you to that point? And then think about, in our schools, what is it that we might have to do to restructure our schools in order to serve what these students hope to be, and how to help them fulfill their promise. So I guess it's kind of like the tension between career and college ready. Obviously, you're going to go to college for some of these careers, but a lot of it also is on our CT, track. So that was, he just really caused me to kind of pause and rethink, but I know I can't go back and just say, we're going to kind of, do away with what we have and try something new. The second one was Saul Khan from the Khan Academy. And if many of you who know that, have our parents and have your kids log on and get free tutoring. And so he talked about artificial intelligence and what is the role in terms of it in our schools. And so he is now trying to get out in front of artificial intelligence, look to see how positively it could be used and structure what he is doing and with his work, as opposed to being afraid of artificial intelligence and thinking that it's only going to harm our kids. So, there are ways in which the software can be structured so that students can use artificial intelligence. You can see how they've used it, but there are also kind of stops there where they want the artificial intelligence program to do something for them and it will reply back, not going to do it. You need to think, you need to give me some more information. And the final speaker was Dr. Sean Ginwright, who holds I think it's at Harvard right now. He holds a position, but I believe he's done a lot of work with writing on African-American youth. And he really looks at healing and what it takes to heal, as our students are experiencing so much trauma in school. And how is it that we work with our families and our students in academia, also preparing teachers? How do we get them to really focus on what is the trauma that, that students carry to school? And how do we begin to heal that? He also looked at hip hop as a way, I think in one of his books, is trying to bring community and bring healing to students and youth. So it was a great conference, lots of professional development. That's our one big annual conference for professional development during the year. There are others, but this is the one that brings us all together. And I think it's well worth it because, the school board members, we are trying to, there's a host of things we have to consider, not only what the CTC deems, necessary that we understand and that we follow, but also what everybody else thinks that we need to take a focus on too. So it's learning to navigate all of those unfunded mandates. I'll just use that term. Thank you.
Commissioner Heredia. Any other commissioners? Yes, Commissioner Cardenas.
Good morning, fellow commissioners, CTC staff, and members of the community. This actually leads into what Commissioner Heredia just discussed as far as what I was going to bring up today. I know that we've all been very busy. That's kind of been the theme, right? Very busy. We should wear t-shirts that say that. But we have to remember just to slow down and be present. And I think that's the hard part that for a lot of us is to stop, put our phones down, get off our computers, but to be present, especially when we're working with students. Oftentimes we feel like we're too busy, but there's moments that we just need to take a pause so we can know what our students are going through or what they actually need from us, what support they need. And that's true even for our own families and our own children and for ourselves. Speaking about just this multi-tiered, multi-domain systems of support. Yes, I said multi-domain because as school counselors, we have to deal with multi-domains that have to do with academics, social, emotional, and college and career. And this last week, I was happy to attend a college fair, which I was part of. And as I walk in the room, it was a reunion for me. I see former students as admissions directors at different universities. I saw former students as medics in the National Guard. I also saw former students that were medical students that were in nursing programs at our local community colleges. They just were in the span of the different careers that exist. And to see them was just so uplifting because this work is, we talk about that intergenerational. We want to be able to let that next generation take over. And I keep having these experiences, and I hope all of you have them as well, because it's invigorating. It just rejuvenates the soul of why we do this work. And so with that said, I was able to attend a 2023 Career Technical Education Conference. And this conference, most conferences have a pre-conference and where you have guest speakers. Our pre-conference, we were actually hosted by the local school district. At the local school district, we were able to go to every single site, every single high school site, and observe and participate in their CTE programs. And at their CTE programs, we were able to see landscape management. We were able to see their construction and welding programs that were at their alternative sites. We were also able to see their state-of-the-art ambulance simulator, where students could go and learn how to be an EMT, how to do firefighting. It was just, this is in a classroom. This ambulance simulator is in a classroom when you walk in, and just the enormous labs that they had. But what stood out, of course, is the culinary program, because the culinary program had a state-of-the-art kitchen. They fed us, and these were students that had, this was the best food I've had probably in a long time. But these were our students, 9th through 12th grade, that were not just learning how to cook and prepare the food, they were learning the science and also the business behind it. And so the facilities that they had and the way they were able to share and their communication skills, you can see just the growth. And even the 9th grade students would talk about how excited they were. And so we had the opportunity to do that as part of our pre-conference. But in the conference, we were reminded about just the important role that educators play, but also school counselors in connecting students to a variety of opportunities. Often we talk about our own experiences, but there's a lot of new experiences that we're not so sure of, that we're not very familiar with. And we actually have to educate ourselves at the new jobs that are coming our way. Speaking of AI, it's one of them. The conference theme was about the importance of high quality CTE programs and student success. The conference provided information and strategies to address challenges in student learning, instructional methods, CTE funding, and advances in technology. Of course, the hot topic, AI, student usage, and educators' concerns. It was a collaboration of industry partners, teachers, school counselors, administrators, just to really learn from one another about best practices, about what's being utilized, and to make very important connections. And I think that's the one thing about conferences, right? That networking and making sure that we connect. And that's how we were able to do that pre-conference, through those connections. The guest speakers talked about rethinking learning environments and about bringing joy and fun back into the classroom. Another guest speaker talked about the use of data. So Michael, you would have loved him. He was also from LA. And the use of data and the future labor market. And he discussed the different markets that are growing right now. And then the last speaker was just a gift, right? It was a nugget because we weren't expecting it to happen. It was astronaut Victor J. Glover, who gave recognition to the educators in his life, specifically those who motivated him to be part of the MESA program and helped foster his interest in math. And he became an engineer, of course, right? He closed out by sharing with all of us that we need to teach students to be resilient, right? Not only to work hard, but to realize that not to quit, to get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and to be lifelong learners, to learn new languages, to learn from each other. And last but not least, to be good teammates. And I share that with all of you because in these times, we need to remember to be good teammates. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cardenas. And I think Astronaut Glover is a CSU Cal Poly SLO alum. Any other commissioners before I move to liaison? I think our only liaison here, Hernandez. Thank you.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay? Good morning, commissioners. I really enjoyed listening to your updates and reports this morning, and members of the public. Like Executive Director Sandy, I was also fortunate to attend the LPI event yesterday, commemorating 10 years since the enactment of the local control funding formula. State Board and LPI President Linda Darling Hammond moderated as was mentioned, the first panel, and mentioned the need for a system approach to addressing educator shortages. The research that Record Johnson presented makes plain LCFF has been worth the effort. I was especially pleased to hear Governor Brown call for increased pay for educators, especially in light of the economic policy impact report that came out this fall, which states that teacher pay penalty in California is 19%. I encourage everyone involved in LCAPs to make educator retention a measurable goal so that states' recruitment efforts lead candidates into a profession where they will stay. I also want to reiterate opportunities I mentioned at the last meeting. Educators at school with 55% or more high need students can apply through the CDE until January 10th, as was mentioned by Commissioner Cotton, to obtain a subsidy to become National Board Certified teachers. Becoming board certified would make the educators eligible to receive incentive grants up to $5,000 a year, and some districts have incentive programs as well. So it's in addition to that for 5 years for continued service in a priority school. The process is well worth it. There's something very important and magical in taking what you know and what you can do and demonstrating it to a basically opening our classroom for public scrutiny, for lack of a better word, and putting another set of eyes on our practice. And as a tremendous fan, because I've seen what it's done for me with performance assessments, this is a process that's definitely well worth it. The CDE has also posted the request for applications for community schools implementation grants, which are due February 9th. Schools can receive up to $500,000 annually to implement these whole child community-based approach to education, regardless of whether they have received planning grant funds. Qualifying LEAs are encouraged to apply. One of the community schools pillars is collaborative leadership, as was mentioned by our colleague here about teamwork and the importance of that, Commissioner Cardenas. And collaborative leadership and practices for educators, administrators, and community schools are expected to orchestrate professional development that's responsive to educators' needs around culturally responsive instruction and positive school climates. Finally, since we last met, CD has posted the final new math framework, which I know CTC staff plan to integrate into our educator preparation standards. Kudos and my hat off to an agency staff who finalized the framework and those here who will make it real for tomorrow's educators. Thank you very much, and congratulations, Commissioner Chair Bruno Shire, on your most recent recognition.
Thank you very much. And we have Liaison Wicks on remotely, and if you didn't get a chance to read his interview in the inaugural issue of Voices from the Field, I hope you will. It was very interesting to hear about your story, so please.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be back with you all. Sorry I couldn't be in person. Finals are next week, and there's a lot of stuff going on as I'm preparing to finish out the semester, but I'm excited to join you all in February. Yeah, so there's not much to report this month, but as I mentioned in our last meeting, one of my key goals is to establish a student liaison council, fostering connections with student teachers and teacher education students statewide. I'm currently in touch with one of the students who applied for the student liaison position, and I'm currently reaching out to a few other students at different universities through their future teachers clubs or even their teacher education programs. I'm also waiting to hear back from a few student liaison applicants. And yeah, if anyone has any recommendations or specific contacts, your input would be very helpful. I aim to turn this initiative into a sustainable program that will extend beyond my tenure with the CTC. I believe this will ensure a continuous influx of diverse voices, supporting the student liaison, such as myself, and offering new perspectives each year. The state of California, as we all know, is very large, and I think my perspectives are very valuable. However, I know there's plenty of students in rural areas in Northern California, even like further down south, that I don't have much experience with. So having a council of other student leaders all across the state will be really helpful. And yeah, once again, I welcome any suggestions and guidance from TCC members to facilitate collaboration and ensure the program's longevity to benefit the next student liaisons to come. On another note, I'd want to address the challenges with the Pearson VUE Online Testing Center. I believe that's the full title of it. I think that's where we take the test for RECA, CBEST, CSETs, all the different testing we have to do for our teacher credentials. I personally encountered a lot of system issues and crashes, unresponsive support during my RECA subtest. And it led to a cancellation, and this was pretty upsetting. It took like an hour and a half just trying to go back and forth with the Pearson VUE Online Testing Center. And I know other students have reported similar issues. So I'm interested in exploring if the CTC can review like student surveys on the testing experiences and work on enhancing the online testing process in general. I think it's really convenient. I know for myself, being at Pepperdine, we're pretty remote. So not having to drive to another testing center that's about 10, 15 miles away and just having the comfort of doing it in my own home or my dorm, the library, is really helpful. But I think any improvements can ensure like a smoother transition and experience for all students. And finally, a quick little update on my student teaching experience. This week, I have my last day at Malibu Elementary for my second round of student teaching. I was in a first grade classroom. It was very impactful. The kids definitely meant a lot to me. And my mentor teacher and the students made me this little book. Hopefully you guys can see it. It's all like handwritten letters from them and like their little pictures. It's very adorable. I was fighting back the tears in that classroom. And yeah, I just had a really great time there. I'm excited to move on to my third semester of student teaching, but I sure will miss my time at Malibu Elementary. And yeah, thank you. That concludes my reports.
Thank you. I looked at Mary in terms of your issues regarding to the testing center, and we will certainly address that at another time.
Yep, we'll look into it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for bringing that to our attention. All right, commissioners, thank you so much. It is 10:10. I want to reinforce everyone for concise and thoughtful and inspiring updates today. And what I would like to suggest we do, oops, let me follow my script. I want to now recess the general session and move to the Educator Preparation Committee. I'd like to begin with item 2A and then take a break, if we may. Okay. Commissioner Clout, will you please reconvene the committee?
Yes, thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It's always so inspiring to be here for comments on our first day. So I'm just feeling very full right now. So thank you, everyone, for all the inspiration that you give me when I'm sitting here at this table. With that said, I would like to call the December 2023 meeting of the Educator Preparation Committee to order. We have 7 agenda items. 3 of these items are scheduled for today. The remaining 4 items are scheduled for tomorrow. The first item for today is item 2A, the annual report of the Committee on Accreditation for 2022-23. This item is being presented by Robert Frelly and Katrina Chakowski, co-chairs of the Committee on Accreditation, and Cheryl Hickey and Aaron Sullivan. This is an information item. Ms. Hickey, will you please begin?
Certainly. Okay, great. There we go. It's moving. Great. Thank you. Little organization this morning. Good morning, commissioners. I'm pleased to be here this morning alongside our 2 current co-chairs for the Committee on Accreditation, Dr. Bob Frelly of Chapman University and Katrina Chakowski of Sweetwater Union High School District, as well as my colleague, Aaron Sullivan. Neither of our 2 co-chairs could be here in person today. Bob was supposed to be here in person, but he is feeling a little ill, but he has joined us via technology, so thank you. And Katrina Chakowski is taking her students to an academic decathlon this afternoon. So she has to be there in person as well. So, but we thank them both for their time and their leadership. I want to acknowledge the work of our other former co-chair, Martin Martinez, who from the Sacramento County Office of Education, who has now retired, but he was the co-chair during this period of time in which this report is represents. So this report is the report of the COA annual report. We do this each December. We know you've read the report and we do not want to repeat its contents, but we do want to illustrate some highlights from this year, as well as look back over the past 5 years to look for some possible trends, to see what we can kind of see if anything is happening. As disruptive as the last 5 years have been, with the pandemic right in the middle of that. But we find that to be helpful in terms of figuring out what may or may not be happening and whether there's any lessons to be learned. So before I begin, I want to acknowledge, and I know that the co-chairs will do this as well, that although this is the report of the COA, this actually represents the work of literally hundreds of people throughout the state. Members of the Board of Institutional Review, who are the volunteers who staff site visits, review documents, do all sorts of things. The personnel at institutions of higher education, local education agencies who run programs and who are our sounding board and that do all sorts of things, as well as the commission staff, whether it is the consultants who handle accreditation activities in the most professional way, as well as our analysts who help us with the data visualizations and collecting the data and all sorts of things. So there's a lot of people involved in this system, and I know that the co-chairs are also going to recognize them as well. And finally, the members of the Committee on Accreditation, we want to acknowledge the Committee on Accreditation, as you recall, are all appointed by you. There are 6 higher ed representatives and 6 K-12 representatives, PK-12, I should say. So this year we have all of their names there. This is last year's group, again, representing the time period in which this report is made. So going to the next slide, I always like to start out with the size and scope of this accreditation system. So I think it's important to recognize how large of a state we really are. There are 252 institutions that we accredit in the state. The vast majority, 167, are local education agencies. Most of them are running induction programs, but they also run some other programs as well. 52 private and independent institutions, very important sector, 9 UCs, 23 California State Universities, and 1 other, which is ACSA, the Association of California State Administrators, who run an administrative program or administrative programs. Along with that, we wanted to portray sort of where are the predominant programs in California. By far, we have teacher induction is our number one most prominent with 176 of those programs. Followed, and these are buckets of programs, so followed by the preliminary education specialists. Those are all the preliminary ed specialists, the various flavors, and there's 140 of those. Followed by preliminary multiple subjects, pupil personnel services, preliminary admin induction, bilingual, and special ed added authorization. So those are the most predominant. Of course, we know that there's many, many more credential types, but we wanted to give you a sense of the types of programs. And I'm going to turn, the next sections deals with the Committee on Accreditation and their decisions. So turning it over to the co-chairs.
Great. Thank you, Cheryl. And good morning, commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to be before you. And I apologize for not being there in person, but hopefully I will see you at another time at some point. So what we have in front of you here are the highlights and trends looking through over the past, or for the 22-23 year. And it describes the number and percentage of institutions with the site visits. So we see that 84% of them have received accreditation. That's full accreditation. Then breaking it down, you have the 13% that have received the stipulations, and then we have another 3% that have received major stipulations, meaning anytime they receive a stipulation, they're required to, usually it's something within the program that needs more illumination or maybe needs some changes within it. And then very often they're asked to do a quarterly report in which they would present the report to the committee for our review and just to ensure that there's been proper progress, making it possible for them to eventually remove those stipulations to have a fully accredited program. And then slide 6, please. Oh, sorry, just Mine just disappeared. There we are. So this is the 5-year trend. What we like to do is we always take time to look at the trends that have been occurring throughout the cycle. And this is the 5-year cycle we're looking at here. And we have the accreditation status. Those who have received accreditation are noted on the left in the darker color. Those on the right who have stipulations. There's remarkable consistency. We have 2019 and 20, 2021 and 22, 23 are fairly consistent. But then you also have 218 and 19 and 21, 22 that are consistent with themselves. There's nothing that we can really point to at this point. The question has come, is this some kind of result from COVID? Perhaps, but the programs had already been in process at that point with the part of their 7-year review. So it's not necessarily a COVID impact, but it might speak to maybe institutions having to redirect their efforts elsewhere rather than purely on the getting the accreditation for their program. So that's perhaps something that might be occurring at this point, but we don't feel as a committee that there's any significant concern because even within there, it's still fairly close to what it has been in the past. So at this point, I want to turn it over to my co-chair, Katrina. Katrina, are you ready?
I think so. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Bob. So I'll be addressing briefly the next 2 slides. Number 7 here, as Bob has said, we're trying to address trends over time. And what you see here are areas where programs may not have been fully aligned with the standards for accreditation. So you can see the numbers in general are pretty small, but I appreciate the kind of teasing out of areas for growth, if we could think of them that way. These are places where programs were not entirely aligned with the expectations of common or program standards. So again, through 2 different programs, preliminary multiple subject, single subject teaching programs, clinical practice is an area that we might look at in terms of coaching programs to better align with the standards. Similarly, in induction, again, although the number is 3 programs that warranted some attention from the COA last year, the role of mentors is something that we want to streamline and clarify so that people are functioning in roles that have been found to be effective in expected ways. So again, as we'll discuss probably with the next slide, one of the things that the COA, I think, does in a remarkably unique way in California is provide feedback to programs that may not be entirely aligned with the standards presented on the previous slide. So this slide illustrates some of the improvement that is drawn forth from these programs. So follow-up involves the consequences of not having fully aligned standards with evidence presented. So there are a variety of ways that the COA revisits programs who are not fully accredited upon their site visit. And those are described here. You can see that the majority of the programs that have some growth to achieve receive a finding or a status of stipulations with a 7th year report. And the 7th year report means they simply return to the COA to update us on the changes that they have made since they were last able to give a chance to update us on following their visit. So it's pretty remarkable from my perspective. You know, I've been on the COA now. This is my 2nd term on the COA, and I have served both as a program manager for teacher induction and as a classroom teacher and a mentor working in a variety of capacities. So I think this slide is especially important for your consideration because what it does is illustrates how the various pieces of the professional services division function along with the COA to engender improvement that is strictly aligned with a consistent set of standards. And wow, whether you're talking in the classroom or you're talking statewide, engineering that type of design is no simple trick. So I think there's one more here. Okay, so the new preparation programs this is again one way the different pieces fit together within our system, and in the last couple of years, I would say this has been one of the more significant changes in accreditation, is this initial program review and how an institution is coached to put on the table the strongest program possible when they are doing something new. If a program, if an LEA or an institution of higher education wants to offer a new program, they are assisted in myriad ways to design and implement a powerful model out of the chute. And so you can see here there was a fairly consistent number of programs. I mean, the variation between 15 and 29 could be seen as significant. But if you looked at the central tendency across those the last 5 years, you'll see it's relatively consistent. So that takes a lot of work on behalf of the consultants in the PSD to really find out if a program is ready to serve its constituents before it can go live.
Thank you, Katrina. And if I can just mention on this slide, while the difference between 29 and 15 programs is seems pretty significant, what we have coming for us right now are PK3 programs. So our IPR team and all of our Board of Institutional Reviewers have been really, really busy since last April reviewing a number of new PK3 program proposals. And in fact, we have 16 that are currently in some phase of IPR, and another 13 institutions that have formally indicated to us that they plan to submit a program proposal for PK3. So we expect, if we were to show you this graph again next year, that number is going to shoot way up again. I think as soon as we get those regulations approved, knock on wood, we've got a lot of programs that are ready to go. So, all right. So just quickly, a few more just sort of points of interest here. So this slide talks about the number of programs that move to inactive status. And I just want to clarify because the next slide talks about withdrawn. So there is a difference between an institution choosing to make a program inactive and fully withdrawing one. So on inactive programs, typically what's happening is a program is going to be teaching out their existing candidates because we require that they have no candidates in order to go inactive. So they're teaching out. They're typically not accepting any new candidates for a while. In fact, it's an inactive program. They should not be. And usually they're evaluating whether or not they want to continue to offer this program for a variety of reasons. And you all work at institutions, you know what those reasons might be. So you'll see that actually this number is down. So we had only 7 programs request to go inactive this year, and that's a full program. It's not, for instance, a piece of a program, like a single subject program might offer math, science, English, social science, and maybe an institution chooses to stop offering social science. We didn't count that here. So we're only counting a full program that was moved to inactive status. And then just another note, programs only allowed to be in inactive status for 5 years, at which point we require them to either reactivate the program or make the decision to fully withdraw the program. And that takes me to the next slide, program withdrawals. So we do have a little uptick in program withdrawals, you will see here, but I think something of note for this last year, we had 4 institutions close, fully close. That was actually 3 IHEs and a school district. Now, with the case of the school district, and I think we talk about this a little bit later, the school district closed their induction program and then they shifted to become part of a consortium, which is not uncommon. The IHEs that closed, though, represented about 10 programs across the 3. So we have this uptick in program withdrawals because an institution that's closing needs to withdraw all of its programs before it can then close. And I do talk about it a little bit more because we have some, exciting news about one of the institution closures, but just in terms of that uptick here, we think that it's because we had 4 institutions closed, which is kind of a lot.
Great. And the next two slides depict the number of programs that were added and the number that were withdrawn over the past 5 years by type. So we can get a sense of whether there's any net gains or losses and if there's anything that we need to know about that. It doesn't cover everybody or every type of program, but we wanted to cover some. So one of the biggest things that stands out in this one chart here is clearly the ed specialist added authorizations for autism spectrum disorder. We had 26 that were withdrawn in this 5-year period and none added. And that is understandable because you all just made the decision to embed that authorization within the preliminary ed specialist standard. So that's a reflection of the policy that was made here at this table. Also of note on this slide is the substantial growth in bilingual programs over this period of time, which is exciting. Adding 21 while only one was closed at the same time for a net gain of 20. There are only 50 currently. So as you can see, that's a large number within the last 5 years that has been added, clearly reflecting the kind of renewed importance of this credential in California. And so we're really excited to see that. Maybe more surprisingly is that although 14 teacher induction programs have been added during this time, 22 were withdrawn. Again, for a variety of reasons, whether it's they're joining a consortium, whether they, whatever reasons that may be, that resulted in a net loss of 8. 12 of those programs that were withdrawn, though, were IHEs that were running programs. So clearly recognizing that the focus has been on local education agencies that are running their induction program. And of course, as Erin mentioned, some of these withdrawals reflect the number of institutions that have closed these past couple of years. On the next slide, these are the sort of the other, some other credential areas you'll see, and I think this is a trend we probably need to follow. A net loss of 9 reading and literacy added authorization and specialist programs. I think that may be an area of concern given our renewed focus on literacy. And we will be working, of course, on updating those standards in the next year. So hopefully we can encourage some new programs in that area. In administrator induction, there's been a large growth in programs with a net gain of 11, adding 17 while closing 6. And then a good number of designated subjects and PPS programs are reflected in the charts. So we just wanted to keep an eye on sort of what's going on in the field with respect to programs, and hopefully that gives you a little bit of a sense of that.
Apologies for advancing the slides beyond what my colleague was discussing. I'm sorry. I got so excited about my own slide. So I apologize for that. As I mentioned, we had 4 institutions closed this last year, and I really kind of talked about that, but wanted to just sort of, call them out if you're wondering, because it's public information. So Bard College closed, Holy Names closed. Sadly, that was a big program, and I know a lot of institutions in the Bay Area worked really closely with Holy Names to kind of gather up their candidates and support them so that they could finish. So just really kudos to the programs for working so well together to support those folks. Mills College also closed, and I'm putting that in quotes because Northeastern University swooped in to sort of take over control of Mills College, not really at the 11th hour, but so the college campus is still open. They are now Mills at Northeastern. And as I mentioned, or I may not have mentioned this, Mills had 6 programs. So that was 6 programs that closed, but because Mills has been supported by this other institution, they are now actively working to reintroduce a number of those programs. And in fact, recently the COA approved their early childhood special education program. So that's been reapproved. So I know they're working actively to get those programs reintroduced for their candidates. And then finally, I mentioned an LEA closed as well. And they were a teacher induction only LEA, and they became part of a consortium that was more local to them. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about IIA. Over the course of the last 5 years, 21 institutions have passed through stage 4. Stage 4 is the point at which after the commission has approved them to sort of go and have their program approved provisionally by the COA. Stage 4 is where the COA evaluates that program proposal from that provisional institution and approves that program for operation for that 2 to 3 year period that the commission typically sets for a provisional institution. So 21 institutions have been approved for programs by the COA in stage 4. 15 of those were LEAs and 6 of them have been IHEs over the past 5 years. Then of course, once they complete that operational period of the 2 to 3 years, they have to host a provisional site visit, at which point they are evaluated for their alignment to both the common standards and the program standards, and eventually come back before you. Of the 21 programs that did move through stage 4, this slide represents the programs that were approved by the COA for operations. So we had 10 teacher induction programs that have been approved, 6 multiple subject programs being offered by IHEs and 1 being offered as an intern program at an LEA. We had 2 education specialist programs approved for provisional operation at IHEs, a prelim admin services program, a clear admin services program at an LEA, 1 bilingual program, yay, and a CTE program. So that's really good news. Then these institutions will have, as I mentioned, their provisional site visits. So 9 of the 21 that have passed through stage 4 have had provisional site visits in the last 5 years. 6 of those were LEAs, 3 have been IHEs. I want to acknowledge that we just had 1 provisional site visit for this year wrap up yesterday. And I want to thank the team lead who wrapped up that site visit and is attending today. Our volunteers are superheroes, truly. And then in the 24-25 year, we have 8 provisional site visits that need to be carried out, which is pretty unprecedented. But if you were noticing on one of the earlier slides, in about 2020-21, we had an uptick on the number of institutions that moved through stage 4. Well, it's time now for us to go out and evaluate those institutions. So 8 provisional site visits coming up in 24-25.
Okay, and this particular slide just highlights some of the current work plan. The section 3 of the report that you have in front of you in the agenda item covers the current work plan. So in addition to the 32 site visits we're currently completing this year, all regular activities are taking place: submission of data for the annual data system, program review, common standards review, follow-up on institutions with stipulations, and any follow-up reports, and review of all new programs. So all of that routine accreditation work is continuing. On the next slide, thank you, is sort of the non-routine things that are also happening. So we wanted to mention, we are heavy in IPR work for the PK3 credential and working really closely with those programs. And trying to get those up and running as soon as the regulations are passed. Technical, and we're working on the regulations as the attorney requires. Technical assistance on a variety of accreditation and standards components. That is a critical aspect of what we do. And every time there seems to be a large need for something, we are trying to be attentive of that. We are also really working to refine various aspects of the system. We are constantly thinking about tweaks we can make to the system. We are probably coming back to you in February with additional requests on the initial institutional approval as we learn more and as we experience more things, then we need a policy on those things. And then the 2 big things I want to mention is we have constantly been trying to be more effective about using our assessment data and how the accreditation system can do that better, how we can really target institutions that may need more help than others based on some data that we have. We've really been trying to do that, and that will continue to be a focus this year. And then, of course, the large task of the certification process. We're beginning that process for SB 488. I know the next item will talk a little bit more about that, but that will be a big endeavor starting this spring and going all through next year. So, and then final thoughts from our co-chairs who are crucial for this.
Thank you, Cheryl. I just want to share a few thoughts from my position of being a long-term member of the COA and working with the commission as a BIR member prior to my appointment to the committee. As you know, the accreditation process is a result of literally hundreds of individuals that Cheryl mentioned, And each one of them is committed to the good of the cause and to provide a highest quality educational experience for California students. And what I really enjoy about the design is it's to support the institution. It's not punitive. While we may enforce stipulations, it's all in support of the students and the programs, which I think is rather unique. There are many entities that are involved in the process. Of course, we have the institutions, the BIR members that Cheryl mentioned. Those are volunteers, and their job is to review the institution's documents. Many of them participate in site visits. And then the COA members can't do our work without everybody who's a member. They thoroughly read the reports. They pour through the details. They take time away from the jobs, just like you do, to attend these COA meetings. And we have 6 of those a year. And then there's also additional work that we do outside of the committee meetings, and that is revising manual, anything else that Cheryl and Aaron feel that needs our attention, we will devote it to that. And it's really a dedicated group of individuals who come prepared. They ask great questions of the institutions, and nothing is rubber stamped. We believe in the work of the staff and all the follow through that everybody does at that point. But then it becomes the committee's charge to ensure that the standards are being met. So they thoroughly read the reports. And then lastly, the staff of the PSD is just tremendous. All the consultants, the work that they do. And then Aaron and Cheryl, the administrators, I was just talking with them this week. They've each been there, I think it was 23 years, they said. And that really speaks to their level of vision, their dedication, and their collective institutional memory. That when they combine with their selfless efforts, it really helps to ensure that we, the COA, we're well prepared to fulfill our responsibilities. And then lastly, just want to mention that even with the ever-changing personnel of the BIR members, the COA, there has been tremendous consistency and progress within the accreditation system year after year. The infrastructure is solid, yet it's adaptable to meet the current and future needs of California's educational system, to provide the highest quality of education and support for our students, our teachers, and for all who have a vested interest in our educational community. And I want to thank the Commission for your support of our work over the years and moving forward to ensure that we are always forward-thinking and providing the best possible experience for our students. And then Co-Chair Tchaikovsky would like to offer a few words as well.
Thanks, Bob. I think my comments here again, as someone who's been on the COA now for a second term, are very similar to what Bob would have noted. But I mentioned this at our last meeting that in September, Education Week did a story on, I think it was titled something like "The Inconsistency of Teacher Accreditation Across the United States." And what that story highlighted was that although there have been attempts to create consistency through these larger kind of consortium-like accrediting groups, nobody outside of the state of California has established a program that allows for implementation of a consistent set of standards across such a diverse, large area as our state has. So although you're obviously informed about our system and how it works, it's pretty remarkable when you consider that California as an economic entity ranks 5th in the world in terms of its complexity. So to have a system with the balance between accountability and coaching that's peer driven, I mean, this is a fairly genius model in case it hasn't occurred to everybody in this room. So, it's not something to be taken lightly. I think that California has not only designed and flown this plane, but that it's still at 30,000 feet. And that comes from, I think, collective memory and a commitment to vision, which is not easily established either. So while I occupy the worm's eye view as a classroom teacher and as somebody who works on the US-Mexico international border in a school with lots of diverse kids, I look up the food chain and up the system, and I know that the people who are orchestrating this large, highly complex effort have their eyes on the North Star. And so to me, as a COA member, I have confidence in that. It makes me feel like every day when I'm in the classroom working with kids, there is something larger than me, which is informed by some values and beliefs that I can believe in as an educator in the state of California. So I think that's important. I think that this isn't just about a bureaucratic organism whose goal is to enforce and punish. It's really about our state's collective potential to raise the bar for all the kids in our state, including mine, who often find school as one of the few places where they can feel safe and take risks and connect with adults who care for them and, you know, see themselves as agents of change in their communities. So, yeah, I'm a fan. I'm a believer. I think the COA, at least in my experience, is characterized by authenticity. The people who represent their sectors are willing to be honest about the challenges confronting them. They are willing to ask questions that are often incisive. There haven't been too many people who have come before the COA who have been in tears, but it has happened because people are willing to ask difficult questions and be empathetic in response. And then ultimately, you know, the professionalism of our group is countered by what I really think is a sincere humility for the magnitude of difficulty that's involved in doing this work at a high level of skill. It's not easy. And I don't think any of us think that. And we have people who range from deans of education to classroom teachers to all kinds of other people in between. And it's a really powerful system with a lot of potential for the future. So thank you for your support of the COA and for your the input that you have obviously contributed to hone its vision. Thank you.
And with that, we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Right, thank you so much. And just, I know we're about to go to public comment, but just your presentation, the slides, the graphs, everything was really helpful. There's so much in this report, and it really listening to how you all explained the highlights was really helpful. And I've got to say thank you to Ms. Chakowski for your closure there. I know I'm going to go back and rewatch the tape of that because I feel like everything you said was just so inspirational for all of the systems that we have in California and how they could be working. So thank you for your closing remarks there. I really appreciated them. With that, though, we need to open for public comment. If there are members of the public that would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or by pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, then. Giving just one last moment, just in case any pop up. All right, then the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? I see Commissioner Brown.
Which Brown are we talking about? First and foremost, I want to say thank you to Aaron and Cheryl. You all are wonderful, especially this work that the staff is doing with this committee. I happen to be the liaison when I'm able to attend, but I can attest to the hard work mentioned by our co-chairs, and thank you for your work. I sit there in awe at this meeting because I've mentioned I'm a geek for accreditation. No one is really interested in that but me. But I really enjoy watching this process that you all go through. It's very methodical. You all are so very well spoken, and you use rubrics, you use guidance, and you're questioning, and you take very much so care when you're speaking to emerging groups who'd like to organize and provide education for a preparation for our future educators here in the state. And you're right. I mean, this is a very unique system in California. We've got a pretty great system going here. And I didn't know that prior to joining the commission. I didn't realize how that accreditation process went. And you all have been very good shepherds, teaching me as I sat, kind of on the side watching, especially the time when there were a few people who came in tears or cried. And I know that I've quipped that, education is a blood sport. Sometimes that, we cry, and then the compassion you all showed the presenters when that happened, I was overwhelmed with gratitude, because you were so professional in those moments too. That's the kind of support that I think we want to have, show the public, and have that be the face of the commission. And I appreciate your work on that committee. I also, gonna look at Executive Director Sandy for a moment, and then look back at the committee for a moment and say, I'd really love to go on one of these site visits if that's possible, because I do want to see the inner workings of the entire process, not just looking at the document, the rubric that you all use to make your decisions, but also to kind of see firsthand how the institutions are working in the inner workings, because I don't get to visit many institutions. And when I do, it's when Miss Greenshire, for example, gets an award, and then I get to talk to administrators at her site, but it's not really the inner workings of the institution. So I would be honored to be on one of those visits at some point in the future. And again, good job, great job, wonderful job to all people involved in this committee. Thank you.
Yes, and absolutely. We could accommodate that. And if any other commissioner would like to do that, that's always an option that's out there for you.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I see Commissioner Gross, I think, has her hand up virtually.
Good morning. I wanted to echo Commissioner Klatt's appreciation for your presentation. I really, really appreciate the visuals and really calling out, not repeating the report, but really calling out the trends. And I am going to be very eager to kind of see how especially the trends related to clinical practice and mentors continues to kind of play out, because I think those are such critical components of both our preliminary programs and induction. And I'm really grateful that you are there looking at that data and really taking that time to figure out how do we better support our programs, because when we better support our programs, we better support our candidates and we better support our kids. So I'm really grateful for your time and really doing that deep dive analysis as a committee and to our commission staff. So thank you very much. Just appreciation this morning.
Commissioner Brown and then Commissioner Simmons.
Quickly, particularly with the PK3 credential, I would like to throw my hat in the ring as interested in participating in a site visit. And also, thank you, Commissioner Gross, for underscoring the importance of clinical practice. There's knowledge and then there's skills. And this accreditation piece and the work that you all do does both, and that's important. So I'm throwing my hat in the ring.
I also want to appreciate all the work that you guys do. I would say that in a 35-year career, one of the best PDs I ever went to was BIR training. And I think that the work that the BIR does and the consistency that you guys impose upon members is really, it sets the stage for everything that goes on in accreditation. My question is maybe foreshadowing 2D a little bit, but when you talked about more effective use of assessment data in accreditation, could you maybe talk about what you're looking at for that? And in particular, where my concern is that there's been a lot of issues raised around disparate impacts of the TPA. And what could the COA do through accreditation if there was a disparate impact in a particular program? How do you encourage that program to differentiate their instruction to remove that impact?
Well, there's obviously we could talk about that for hours and hours, but I think one of the challenges with accreditation so far is we had to build the data system, which we've done. And so the data visualizations are there. The institutions are expected to use the data that they provide us, basically, and that we get from, you know, the assessment organizations and things like that. They are expected to use that for program improvement. So they're supposed to analyze their own data, make programmatic changes, and the accreditation teams are also having access to those same data. So they go in and they say, there's an issue here or there's not an issue here. I think the challenge has been doing it on a more statewide basis. So having a team of people who can dig into it on an annual, semi-annual basis and say, hey, there's these 3 institutions that really there's a problem that we need to go in, whether or not they have a site visit or not, but there's something going on in these 3 institutions or these 5 institutions. These other 10 institutions are doing great. Maybe it's a lighter touch over there, those kinds of things. Years ago, when we did the strengthening and streamlining process, 2014 to 2016, that was one of the objectives is, can we lighten the accreditation load on those institutions that have a strong history of doing well in accreditation and have indicators that show that their programs are strong? And we've never quite gotten there yet because we don't have the data support to be able to do that. And I think Mary's been working on trying to build a data team to help us out with that kind of work. But those are the kinds of things we'd like to do. And I think you remember a couple of meetings ago, LPI came forward with a document, and they had a couple of charts of, they had come up with some sort of indicators that say, okay, these 4 programs are problematic. And so we want to be able to have that kind of data where it really shines a light on where can we focus our attention for both accountability and support and assistance.
Where I'm looking at this is I look at what CalTIDES has done using that CalPADS data.
Mm-hmm.
Just last week, all the SARC data was due. And when I went to look into what I had to do for the SARC, I had to do nothing because CalPADS had completely, it had pre-populated all the fields. And it seems like that we should be able to do that for programs so that they can really spend their time on the analysis of the data rather than the collection of the data.
And David's going to come to the table. Love it.
I don't know if we have reported to the commission, but a couple of years ago, the commission received a grant from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation to get a Harvard Data Fellow. It's a 2-year commitment, and a couple of one of our current staff and Marjorie Succo, who I'm sure you remember, both went through that program. So Fifi, who's next, or not next, she's coming in a little later this morning, went through that program. So it took us 2 years to get a match, but we now have Kristen is our Harvard Data Fellow, and the project that we're working on is something almost exactly what you're talking about. So we've mocked up kind of a quick overview sheet for each, and we want to do it at, not just the program sponsor level. We want to go down to the credential level and then even the pathway, because we think that there may be some differences between different pathways at different institutions. I think the intern versus traditional is going to be the biggest difference. But, we also do want to look at residency and see what are we seeing from residency programs. So we have mocked up our first draft of what we would like to see. And this will be part of Kristen's work with us.
And I see, Ms. Chakowski, did you want to respond to that also? I see your hand up.
Just briefly. And earlier in the meeting, someone said, I earned a doctorate. I'm Dr. Chakowski. Oh, wait, that was not I do have a doctorate. So I'm Dr. Chakowski, for whatever the record is in this august setting.
Thank you.
Well, I just wanted to add something about data, and from a COA perspective, I think the comment was just made that rather than scrambling to try to put numbers in a table, we want programs to be focused on analysis of those data. That might actually be a better use of their time. I just wanted to also comment that I think one of the things the COA works hard to do is negotiate a balance between the standardized expectation of the standards there is one set and there are common expectations, but how those look in local context varies, right? There was our introductory comments this morning were about the LCFF and eligibility, this idea that local funding is probably a better formula than some blanket formula. So I just think the COA attempts to also learn from programs about how it is that effectiveness can be purposefully described by institutions at the ground level. So, what data are organizations collecting and why are they collecting that is a question that we often come back to. How do you know? How do you know that your mentors are actually serving in this particular way? Is it important to have a mentor who has a similar credential to the secondary school teacher that they're supporting? And we had a whole conversation about that. I think it's important just to kind of temper a desire for consistency in data with responsiveness to programs that are attempting to implement models to achieve common outcomes, if that makes any sense, because we can learn a lot from schools who are proposing models of accountability that perhaps work better in an aggregate sense at the end of the day. So site innovation, I think, is something that the COA is listening to. And I know that in the past we had committed to identifying exemplars and bright stars and, the seed in the field, while a reduction in funding, of course, makes us all, brace for impact. Again, California can lead the way in many ways, and there are sites within our state that are very efficient. Our limiting factor is never funding. I mean, yes, it's important, but the ideas about how to collect numbers and what numbers matter and what ones perhaps matter most can really be coming from the people doing this work also.
Thank you, Dr. Chakowski. Thank you. Chair Grinnell-Shire, you are up next.
I just wanted to take a moment. This was a wonderful presentation. I appreciate this. And I'm thinking about the interconnectedness of this work. I know you mentioned 2D, that we're looking at our TPAs. We're also looking at teacher shortage and how the closure of these programs impacts that. I live in the Bay Area. The closure of Holy Names was painful. And as a previous HR professional in a school district, we relied heavily on those programs to populate our schools with teachers. I think in addition to that, our focus around literacy, so CDE's focus, legislative focus, SBE's focus on literacy, and learning that 9 programs have closed. We're hoping that we were hoping for 18 to open, so that's the need that we have. And so I'm just highlighting the fact that while we are celebrating where we are with our accreditation numbers and folks who are coming, are moving through this process, there is a serious need, very serious need. And I don't know what we can do collectively, what CTC can do to really encourage and really looking at those pathways as well, right? You mentioned residencies as well. What can we do to encourage those programs who either are floundering or considering to kind of move through that accreditation process?
And to that point, this data just hits the tip of the iceberg. It also doesn't talk about regional. Are there no reading programs in a certain part of the state? Are there, so those kinds of things need to be looked at as well.
I also just wanted to sort of yes and the shortage and hearken back to the data that we saw about clinical practice and mentors, about the finding, having more findings in those areas on the site visits. And just acknowledge the fact that a teacher shortage isn't just about input, it's about the folks that are there. School districts and preliminary programs at IHEs are having trouble finding mentors that are willing to serve in induction programs and mentors that are willing to take student teachers into their classrooms because they're shorthanded and they're stretched very thin. And so I think a lot of times, not a lot of times, I think that's something to be cognitive of when we look at these data, is that the shortage affects it affects the existing staff as well as the HR need to fill.
I think with that, maybe as we talk about public service announcements and really pushing and encouraging people to join the field, it's also looking at existing teachers to step up. That I think would impact retention. It also, as a student teacher a long time ago, offered another set of hands in the classroom. It is work, but it also is another adult in the room that's learning and is engaging as well. So as we're thinking about how do we promote that, if we see that gap, how do we promote it? How do we encourage folks? And again, it ties to national board. It ties to so many other things. So thank you.
I think Chair Grunow-Shire, Commissioner De La Torre, and then Commissioner Francois, I think you're next in that line. And Dr. Chakowski, and then we'll circle back to you also.
Commissioner Klatt, I'll go ahead and wrap it up and let our other colleagues go first, maybe. Is that okay?
Sure, yes, yeah. Commissioner De La Torre.
Yes, thank you. So my concern was about the mentors, and I'm glad that's been coming up because it's been a serious issue of how to find appropriate mentors for these teachers. And because of the teacher shortage, it has impacted the current staffing as well. And I know that with the teacher shortage, the teachers that are available that would make great mentors are also being used in multiple other areas. So they're being spread thin, and they just don't have the ability or the time to serve as a mentor. And I know that in my district, we were short. I think we're looking for up to 700 mentors that we just cannot find. And so we can't fill these positions that we must fill because we promised these new teachers that they would have a mentor. And one of the issues was about matching the certification of the mentor with the certification of the new teacher. And how important is it really that the mentor have the same certification area? Would it be possible to have non-credential like mentors to as opposed to none? But it is a serious issue. And I mean, how to find those mentors, because the teachers are they're having to take care of their own personal health, their welfare, and saying no because they just can't. They're doing too many other things. It's not that they're not stepping up to the plate. They're most definitely stepping up, but there's so many things for them to do that they can't do them all. I was wondering if there was any consistency or guidelines between the mentors within all these programs, or is it just locally designed? And is there any sharing of like learning that can be shared across other districts or other agencies so they can take advantage of how they've been able to implement the hiring of mentors? Because mentors, to my understanding, there's two kinds of mentors: full-time mentors and then part-time, the ones that are still in the classroom, and then mentoring when they're not working in the classroom, which mentoring really is a full-time job. And also recruitment of the mentors, because that's been really difficult. Thank you.
Well, I mean, I am an induction mentor. I don't know if I could speak to that or if I'm out of turn.
Well, Commissioner Francois, you have your hand up. Are you okay with us just answering that question, or is your hand up for the same reason? You're okay. Okay. So, Dr. Chakowski, if you want to quickly address that. I also see now I don't know who's doctor and who's Mr. and Miss, but so Mr. Frelly, I recognize your hand. And I think that's the end of my list. So yes, Dr. Chakowski, if you want to quickly answer Commissioner De La Torre's question. Thank you.
Well, just regarding mentors from a variety of perspectives, there are standards, program standards that are very specific about kind of the non-negotiable attributes of a mentoring model, but at no point do those standards direct programs to implement a particular model. So when you mention part-time and full-time mentors, the goal is to provide secondary teachers access to support in their content area, which as a high school teacher, I would say is essential. Everything from applications of technology to a variety of other things are dependent on a mentor's ability to support someone in a curricular area. So the COA, we just had a conversation about an issue like this. I think there are guidelines that are sufficiently flexible that the way in which the standard is implemented can vary, but it is a statewide standard. And just regarding a shortage of mentors, this is my 32nd year in this gig, and I've worked in secondary education my entire career. It's not that we experienced capable teachers who could be mentors. It's not that we're doing too many things, I think, which is our fundamental issue. I mean, teacher colleagues here, you can disagree. I really think a lot of this has to do with the deprofessionalization of our career and the messaging that unfortunately a lot of really good teachers receive about what they are expected to do as teachers. So again, coming full circle and reminding good teachers through systems like ours that we are in fact capable professionals, that there is a higher purpose to what we're doing, that we are doing something incredibly complex and valuable, and that it can be demonstrated and documented and celebrated in a variety of ways. That's something California can do for its experienced teaching force to draw mentors from the field. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Francois?
Thank you. I echo everyone's appreciation for the quality of this item and highlighting the trend. It was a pretty dense item to read through, and so that was very helpful. I wanted to offer up, I appreciate that the next steps would be the intention around drilling down more deeply into the data and looking more closely at who we're talking about, where we're talking about, what we're talking about. And I just want to offer up a suggestion. As you know, the primary contribution of the UCs in teacher preparation is around high quality research and best practice innovation. And currently, the UCLA Center for the Transformation of Schools is engaged in research around identifying teacher education deserts, so to speak. And I think that they would be a really good partner in helping you to drill down. If they could just share what they found so far, maybe do some collaborative research together. That is a significant role of the UC. So I just want to remind and put that out on the table.
Thank you. Mr. Frelly, I think you wanted to add some comments.
Sure, yeah. And just for clarification, it is doctor, but as my son liked to say many, many years ago.
Thank you. I feel like we need on our screen, maybe we need a reminder.
No worries, but he used to say, yeah, my dad's a doctor, but the kind of doctor that can't help anyone. So anyway, so yeah, the comment I was going to offer was regarding the mentors. And one of the standard that we have noticed, the trend that has been met with concerns most often has been the mentors. That is finding an appropriate mentor, both in a long-term fashion, and by short-term, that's like the student-teacher observation or the supervisor. But it's really having somebody that can be present with the student and guide them in the process, because as we all know, it's during the student teaching that really is the make or break. I mean, that sets them up for their first 3 years of teaching, and with the continual matriculation, and many leaving the profession because they haven't felt well prepared can be pointed to what experience they've had in student teaching with their mentor. So we do note that that has been a level of concern, and we are certainly open to any suggestion that anyone might have. And we have been looking at different programs around the state and different regions to determine what might be the cause of this, and what if there might be some change that might be necessary, but certainly what we can do as a committee to help support that, to ensure that there are some appropriate mentors for the students. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would just add, I mean, this has been something I've brought up for a long time. And so I appreciate Commissioner Gross and Commissioner De La Torre bringing it up as well. And I'm going to say again, and I don't know if it's popular or not, but LEAs are ultimately in control of what happens contractually with teachers. They employ teachers. And so if we have teachers who don't have capacity within their workday to take on the additional responsibility, and I don't call it a burden because I think I agree with what Commissioner Cotton said. It's having served in that role, I get a lot out of that as well. But it is an additional responsibility that sometimes the same teachers who are also the chair of their WASC committee, they're also department chairs, they're also heading up other committees on campus. There's not enough capacity in our work days. And ultimately it's the LEA who decides how to employ us, right? And so I want to just throw back in there, as a commission, we can't control that, but we could potentially someday maybe look at having some sort of authorization or some sort of credentialing piece around coaching and mentoring that might nudge LEAs into considering a little bit differently how they employ teachers in the classroom, especially those teachers who might have that additional expertise in coaching, to maybe restructure contracts that allow those teachers to have space in their workday to mentor folks. So you asked for suggestions. So I'll throw that out there, and then I'll turn things back over to Chair. And I don't see anyone else on my list, so I'll turn it over to the Chair.
And I have a really quick question and then just a quick kudos. On page 24, you talk about the discussions with AQEP, which is one of two national accrediting bodies. And I'm curious, I know we have a partnership agreement with CAPE. Do we have a partnership agreement with AQEP as well?
We do.
Great. That's perfect. Thank you. So I don't want to reiterate what other folks have said, but I just want to, again, acknowledge the staff and our co-chairs and the COA for this amazing, dense and rich report. I also am reflecting on some of the comments about the power of peer review. And I want us to keep that in the back of our minds as we think about our other agenda items that are coming up, and to reflect what Commissioner Cardenas said, is just stop and pause for a little bit and think about the impact of our collective work over the last couple of decades in building the system, which is essentially peer review of our programs. And we collectively should be very proud of that. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Are there any other commissioners who had questions or comments? I'm looking on my Zoom participants and see none. Okay, well, this is an information item and a lot of information it has been shared, but no action is needed at this time. So thank you, Dr. Fraley, Dr. Chakowski, Ms. Hickey, and Ms. Sullivan. And I think we're taking a 10-minute break. So it is 11:15. That gives us until 11:25 to be back at the table, please. So it sounds like we do have a quorum. So, okay, we have a quorum. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. So next, I think we almost have everyone. I don't want to have to do my classroom voice. I'm trying to avoid it. I don't know how it'll come out on a microphone. Okay, we have item 2B now, the request to adjust the accreditation cycle timeline to complete literacy certification required by Senate Bill 488. This item is being presented by David DeGear, Cheryl Hickey, and Aaron Sullivan. This is an action item. Mr. DeGear, will you please begin?
Thank you. Good morning, Commissioners. This item presents a request to adjust the accreditation cycle for the 2024-25 academic year to allow for the completion of the literacy program certification process required by Senate Bill 488. Before the commission can implement the new required literacy performance assessment in July 2025, it must review all 236 preliminary multiple subject and education specialist teaching programs for alignment with the requirements specified in Education Code sections 44259, paragraph B, and paragraphs A and B. Programs must be fully aligned to these requirements so that candidates have the opportunity to learn what is covered in the new literacy standards and their corresponding teaching performance expectations prior to taking the new literacy performance assessment. The certification process is also an important step in ensuring quality reading and literacy instruction in teacher preparation. The literacy certification process required by SB 488 is a vital one-time part of our accreditation system. The proposed adjustment to the accreditation cycle timeline would provide both preparation programs and commission staff the time and focus needed to ensure a high-quality certification process and implementation of the new literacy requirements. Administrator Aaron Sullivan will now cover other accreditation activities that will continue to happen during the 2024-25 academic year.
Thank you. So just in case you were asking yourselves, well, if we adjust the accreditation site visits by a year, whatever will staff and the COA do? Well, I think following on that last presentation that you heard, you've seen that there are a variety of activities that we support programs in, that the COA still must accomplish even when we don't have site visits. So we will still have, from this year's 32 site visits, as you saw in the last report, about 15% of our total site visits each year require some kind of follow-up. So quarterly reports, a 6-month report, maybe even a revisit. We will still have to continue to accomplish all of those tasks because obviously they're very important. We have an institution that doesn't have full accreditation. We want to do everything we can do to support them to meet all of the commission's standards. So that work will still be in place. I also mentioned there are 8 institutions in provisional status that need to have site visits. We don't want to do anything to delay their ability to become fully approved commission program sponsors. So those 8 provisional site visits will still need to be carried out in the 24-25 academic year. And provisional site visits are a little more of a lift because these are institutions that have never been through a site visit before. So staff time with those institutions is pretty intensive leading up to those site visits. In addition, we will still be doing IIA, so we'll still be working with institutions that want to become new program sponsors. We will still be doing initial program reviews. We don't want to stop institutions that want to maybe add a reading program or any program they might want to add. So we will still need to carry all of that through. I mentioned we have 13 PK3 program proposals we expect to come in sometime in 2024. So that's just in a nutshell some of the activities that will still continue to happen, even if we do what this is proposing, which is pick up the entire accreditation system and just move it off by 1 year. Cheryl has some things to add as well.
Yeah, so we know that the field is anxiously awaiting the submission requirements for the certification process, and we've been working really diligently to make sure that there's certain objectives that are being met and that we're not missing anything. That, you know, first and foremost, that it's focused on the ed code section that David mentioned, and that the document we are asking for will yield us sufficient information to make those decisions. We also wanted to minimize the duplication of that information. If you look at that standard in the TPEs, there's a lot of intentional duplication. So we're trying to make it clear, you know, what an institution needs to provide us without asking and being too onerous on the institution while still getting us what we need. And then just making sure that to the extent possible, the way we're asking for that information and certification thing can be used for other accreditation activities as those roll out. So for program review coming up in the future. So we're spending a lot of time making sure that we're asking for the right things in the right way. But we hope to have that PSA out in the next couple of weeks. We've been saying that for a while, but we've been really working on this very hard. So the other thing that the adjustment in this time frame will allow us to do is to provide us some time that we haven't had to provide technical assistance to the field on the literacy standards and the TPEs, in particular, to just bring together the right folks. So people from the field who have already been working on this. I think Dr. Pavri had mentioned this morning, CAR W at CSU, bringing together those folks and having some webinars that where people can share what they're doing, how they're changing their programs, what they think is important, and having an opportunity to discuss with one another. We have not had the ability to do that. And I think that that would, you know, taking off of the plates, the preparation that we normally put into this in the spring for next year's site visits would allow us some time to be able to do that. Now, there are some letters here from institutions and so there are a number that are generally in support. There are a couple that appear to want it to be a program decision. But one we wanted to address, raise concerns about those institutions which have national accreditation, because with AQUIP and NK, there's something out of the past, sorry. With CAPE and AQUIP, we do coordinate the site visits. And so that is that's a real issue. And so there are 6 institutions right now that are jointly accredited, that have national accreditation. None of those 6 have a site visit next year. There is one institution that has a site visit the following year, and we would be happy to work with that institution, to work with the national accrediting bodies to either maintain their timeline if that works best for them, and we could adjust some activities leading up to that site visit. And for the next 5 that are on the out years, we are happy to, it's actually kind of an easy fix for us to just adjust their cohort so that if they wanted to stay in the same time frame, because of the coordination we have to do with the national accrediting bodies, we could certainly work with them on that and accommodate that. So that I don't see that being as a problem. We certainly could do that, and we're happy to move that forward. So with that, we are happy to answer questions.
Thank you. We will now open for public comment. If there are members of the public who would like to give a presentation, please notify the meeting moderator by submitting a request card or by clicking on the raise hand icon if participating through Zoom, or pressing *9 if participating by phone. Recording secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments on this item.
Okay, seeing none and giving a moment just to be sure. All right, then the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? And I see Commissioner Simmons with your hand up already. Okay, and then Commissioner Whitesmith.
I think one of the comments also was that people often make career decisions around, like, it's going to be the time for the site visit, so that this will be my last year and then I retire. I know there are people who, well, no, I mean, really.
Yeah.
Or there will be people who FERP because their job is going to be to take charge of accreditation. So I wonder if there is there would be the possibility of allowing programs that have maybe even contracted for a extra person to be their accreditation site visit mentor. I mean, that the CSU or the IIACU, I get your letters wrong, sorry, would be able to speak to that better.
And I thought someone might be responding to that, but I'll go in order. So I think the order I have is Commissioner Whitesmith and then Commissioner Pavri. I see your hand on the Zoom.
So yeah, well, let me ask my question first before it goes out of my mind, and then I'll address what you're asking. So my question is, I have a colleague who is working with AQUIP right now, and they said that there's 15 institutions actually that are going up for AQUIP accreditation next year. Do you have those numbers?
If they are, we don't know about it.
Okay. So I guess that's a point that multiplies the issue. So thank you for that. And then there are folks, especially the
Yeah.
privates, we do have to get additional people sometimes to help us because some of us tend to be quite small as opposed to the larger institutions. So there are people who do make plans because you get a junior person in, right? If I retire and we hire someone brand new, it creates complications. But the majority of folks are appreciative of the change. It gives them more time. It allows them to plan better. And I think that works for us on this.
Commissioner Pavri?
Thank you so much. So in terms of the CSU response to this, I have only overwhelmingly heard support for this proposal to give people more time. I am not opposed to allowing, campuses who have some extenuating circumstances to make that known to the CTC. And as you talked about, finding ways to work with them, I think that might be a solution. The reason I originally raised my hand was I am a little confused or looking for clarification around the PK3 credential certification timeline. So could you talk about, so if a campus is maybe one of those 13 who's already put in for the new PK3 or plans to in the 24-25 year, can you talk about when are they expected to turn in their materials for the literacy certification?
Oh, PK3? Yeah. Sorry, let me reorganize my thoughts here. Any new program proposals coming in, they have to respond to literacy. So those new program proposals are already responding to it. Yeah.
And I'm sorry, just to close my question there then, so any new program submits at the time when they submit their program proposal for the PK3 credential, since it's a brand new credential?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, all new credential programs that come in the door that are affected by SB 488 have to come into the new literacy standards. We have only approved one so far, just to let you know, and we have a number that we've been looking at and finalizing that look pretty good. So I think those will go forward very soon. And that is not a PK3. I think that was an ed specialist. Mm-hmm.
And just one more thing, I think, Commissioner Pavri, we still need to wait, I think, until the regulations are approved before we can approve a PK3 program. So you approved in the consent calendar modifications to address concerns by the Office of Administrative Law, and they will have 30 days to review those. So we're really hoping that come the beginning of, or middle of January, we can start approving.
Do other commissioners have questions or comments? Oh, yes, Commissioner Francois.
I just wanted to say that the UC programs also support the proposed adjustment to the accreditation cycle timeline, particularly because we really want to spend some time focusing on implementing the literacy standards, and this gives us the space to do that.
Other questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Litt.
Thanks for the update and the report. I think there's a lot of wisdom in what's being proposed. It seems like we're going to need some version of an amendment or an addendum to that I don't think is represented in the document before we can move to approve it. Just to, I think all the kinds of variabilities that we might want to adapt for seem wise, but they need to be documented in some way that gives you guidance when folks come back to you with a request, that even just to say that that's a possibility, that's not really present here. I don't know if we can do that on the fly or if we need to take that over the evening and be prepared for it by tomorrow.
I think you certainly welcome to provide staff direction. And if I'm understanding you correctly, I think what we've heard and what we've seen in the written commentary is that there are going to be one-off situations. And the question is, is staff prepared to take those up on a case-by-case basis? And the answer is yes. And but if there's any other particular spin on that direction that you think you should provide, we're welcome to hear it.
This staff might be able to help guide us, to help guide you. But because part of my worry is that if we essentially offer kind of a blanket addendum that says for institutions that would prefer to stay on cycle, they could work with staff to make that adjustment. That potentially puts you in an awkward position with an institution that comes to you for with a rationale and a reason that you don't think is reasonable, or a request that is unreasonable. So for example, we want to postpone the literacy piece because we're so swamped and need to do our site review next year. So I just worry a little bit that making it overly broad then puts the staff in an awkward position if we have approved that anybody who comes to the commission and says we need flexibility, that's very open-ended. And I want to make sure
appreciate
that
that.
for that.
I think one thing we should make absolutely clear is that the certification around literacy is not adjustable. That has a statutory deadline, and I think we've got a long enough on-ramp here over the next 18 months. Somebody down there signal me if I'm in the right. Yeah, more or less. Okay. For institutions to do what they need to do. And at the point at which it looks like they may have trouble doing what they need to do, the issue is, can they be certified or not? And what happens if they're not certified? But I think when we face that concern, we'll be back to you to discuss that. I do think that for programs that have both a national and a state accreditation, and all of that is scheduled, we're prepared to provide that facilitation. And if there are other particulars around institutions that would like their accreditation site visit to occur, I defer to you, Cheryl and Aaron, if there are particular situations in which we would be amenable to that, and other situations where we would say, no.
I think we might need to lean on the expertise of the segments to tell us what a real need would be, right? Because it's difficult for us. We don't run the programs. And so, is staffing or is FERPing or is something like that, is that a significant need? And then the other thing that I keep muttering to Cheryl, just drives her nuts, is if we don't shift the whole system and we do a few of these site visits in 24, 25, then where do those people live? Because they're not in a cohort now. So we don't skip their site visit, but we delay something somewhere. And I mean, we can certainly work that out, but they end up with an off year somewhere in either submission of preconditions or something else. So we're not creating a new cohort. We just have this sort of blank cohort, this like null.
Commissioner Simmons, did you want to follow up?
What is the process for switching cohorts currently?
It's not done very often, but it's usually a letter from the dean or the director that says, here's why. One of the most recent ones we did, I think, was for one of the Cal Polys that was changing entirely to the semester system or whatever. And so they had to redo everything. So we understand that it was a big undertaking. So we granted that. But it doesn't happen very often.
Chair Grenoshire?
So I think I heard from our IHE leads support for this proposal. And I'm looking at the commissioners on the screen and Commissioner White-Smith. I also heard from Commissioner Litt some direction to the staff that I think will help guide what happens in the next couple of years. I think that's sufficient. I'm looking at the staff because I appreciate Commissioner Litt want to protect you all too.
Mm-hmm. I think that the only question I would ask is, I think one of the letters suggested that we've already put a lot of work into it. And it didn't mention anything about staffing. It just said we've already put a lot of work into it. we're 10 months out from the first visit next year. I mean, so there's a lot of work coming if they were to go forward anyways. So I'm just wondering how the commission feels about that kind of argument and where you fit with that. I mean,
And
is
the
that
other-
compelling enough?
The other thing I'd add is it's not wasted work. I mean, it's work that's going to have to be done for their site visit year anyways.
Commissioner De La Torre?
That was going to be my question. The work that they've done, they can just have it waiting. So when it's time to present it, here it is. So I don't see how that would be an issue.
Yeah.
It doesn't harm, they won't have to redo that work in the subsequent year. So
Commissioner Litt?
To my mind, this is the kind of decision making that we probably don't want to leave you left holding without any guidance. And so if our sense, the sense of the group and all of our communities that we've spoken with is that somewhere in the vicinity of 90% of institutions are happy with the process, if they essentially petition staff that they would like to stay on track for whatever reason, we probably should be supportive. We could have conversations first, as you noted, that might help guide them. But at the end of the day, if their preference is to stay on track, it seems that that's essentially what we're going to be offering approval for. And I just wanted to make sure that then the staff is ready to move forward with whatever number of institutions that might be. Clearly, some number of them that are on national accreditation cycles, but some other number that may well, having just gone through the cycle, when you ramp up the work, putting a pause on it is not always that feasible for all kinds of reasons. And institutions may have reasons we can't anticipate today. So my recommendation would be that if we're offering flexibility, we're offering flexibility that can engage conversations that may help folks change their position or their mind. But if that's what they'd prefer, then we should support that. Then on the back end, you'll have to think about whether they're also then need to essentially be in another cohort or they get another reprieve in a later year.
So this is an action item, just as a reminder. Do any other commissioners have? Yes, Commissioner De La Torre.
would it be appropriate to make a motion at this time that we approve the request to adjust the accreditation cycle timeline by whatever was recommended by the staff?
I heard a motion. I think to recommend that the commission approves the proposed modified accreditation timeline specified in this agenda item. That was a motion?
Yes.
Okay, so I have a motion and a second from Commissioner Simmons. So is there further discussion of, or does staff, do you have anything else you'd like us to consider or?
No, I think it sounds like we're taking what Commissioner Litt mentioned as direction to staff.
Any other commissioners? Oh, no. Any other commissioners? All right, seeing no hands, let me make sure my virtual hands, seeing no virtual or actual hands. Will the recording secretary call for the vote, please?
Nat Brown,
Aye.
Jose Cardenas,
Aye.
Cheryl Cotton,
Aye.
Juan Cruz,
Aye.
Christopher Davis,
Aye.
Michael De La Torre,
Aye.
Akita Guino Shire,
Aye.
Megan Gross,
Aye.
Johanna Harwick,
Aye.
Susan Aradia,
Aye.
Bonnie Clark,
Aye.
Ira Litt,
Aye.
Monica Martinez,
Aye.
David Simmons.
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you, Mr. DeGeary, Ms. Hickey, and Ms. Sullivan. And we'll move on to our last item for today is item 2C, the annual report card on California teacher preparation programs for the academic year 2021 to 2022. This item is being presented by Kara Mendoza and Fifi Lau. This is an information item, and I'll give a moment for staff. It looks like we're having to transition some devices and computers, connections. So giving staff a moment, giving us a moment to catch our breath and get to the right item on our computers. All right, I think we're almost there. Okay, we're very close. Okay. Okay, we ready?
Good morning, commission members.
Good morning.
We have 6 more minutes of morning. Isn't that delightful? Item 2C today is the annual report card on the California teacher preparation programs for the academic year 2021-22, as required by Title II of the Higher Education Act. My colleague, the amazing and talented Fifi Lau, is here today to refresh our memories about Title II reporting requirements and to present you with the report and data. Something of note is that today's data is from 21-22 academic year, and it's the same data presented to the commission last April. With that, today's data might feel a little familiar because you saw some of it in April. And today's information then is follows the requirements and such in the provisions outlined in Title II. So we are very happy to be here, and I'm going to pass it now, the rest of the presentation, all of the presentation to Fifi.
Thank you, Kara, and good morning, commissioners. So again, to start with, I will provide the background on the Title II report that institutions and the state are required to submit, and then move on to the 21-22 selected findings. The report is mandated by federal law under Title II of the 1998 Higher Education Act. The Higher Education Act legislation was reauthorized in August 2008, and sections 205 to 208 call for the accountability for teacher preparation programs, specifically on the types of programs offered and data on program effectiveness.
Could you move your microphone just a little closer? Thank you.
I think I might have to angle it a bit. Okay. Is this better? There are 3 major reports developed for the annual Title II reporting cycle. The institution reports, also known as the Institution and Program Report Cards, the IPRC, a consolidated state report, also known as a state report card, the SRC, and a compiled national report, also called the Secretary's Report. For the institution's reports, teacher preparation programs usually submit their IPRCs in the U.S. Department of Education system in April of each year. However, for the 21-22 data collection, it was delayed to May 19th of this year. There was a federal contractor change a couple years ago, so the reporting timeline was slightly affected in the last 2 years. After the IPRCs have been certified by the deadline, time is allocated for states to submit the SRC to the U.S. Department of Education in October. As a result, the most recent Title II data are not available to be reported until the fall of each year. Then the Secretary's report is usually published the following April. This is the 23rd state report that California has submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. The federal contractor designed and maintained a web-based data entry tool to collect the IPRC data submitted by institutions in all 50 states and territories. The SRC is also a web-based paperless system and is used by all 50 states and territories. The Title II requires submission of the IPRC from institutions approved for the initial teaching credential preparation programs only. Specifically, these programs would include institutions that are approved to offer the preliminary and/or intern multiple subject, single subject, and/or education specialist programs during the reporting year. The report does not include designated subjects teaching and any of the services programs. Only candidates who are earning their initial teaching credential will be reported. Title II does not require reporting on candidates who are adding authorizations or earning subsequent credentials. There are 3 types of Title II reports available for teacher preparation programs to report on. The traditional route, which is normally focused on student teaching programs, the alternative IEG-based, which is the university intern program, and the alternative not IEG-based route, which is the district intern program. And for the rest of this presentation, I will refer to it as the alternative LEA-based route. IEGs with an intern program are required to submit 2 separate reports, one for the traditional route and the second for the alternative IEG-based route. District intern programs only submit 1 report, which will be the alternative LEA-based route report. State assessment is a big focus in this report as it can provide information on program performance. For each assessment, the state has to report the number of candidates who took the exam, the number who passed the exam, and a pass rate. All teacher preparation programs report on the following exams: the Basic Skills Exam, the California Subject Examination for Teachers, the CSETs, the Reading Instruction Competence Assessment, the RICA, and starting in the 2018-19 academic year, the Teaching Performance Assessment, the TPA. These are state exams that candidates may take to earn the initial teaching credential. It may be important to note that the basic skills exam options include CBES, CSET multiple subject plus writing, the CSU exams, SAT, ACT, and AP exams. Other non-exam basic skill options include out-of-state basic skills, coursework, and coursework plus other options. The Title II only requires pass rates and scale scores for initial state certification or licensure of teachers. As a result, the CBES and CSET multiple subject plus writing would be included in the pass rate report as they are state exams that can be used for an initial teaching credential. There are also options other than passing the CSET to meet the subject matter requirement. Other options include completing a subject matter program, an applicable coursework verified by the Commission, a degree major, or a combination of coursework and examination options that meet the domains of the subject matter requirement. The CSET will be included in the pass rate report as they are the state exams that can be used for initial teaching credential. To emphasize, although there are other basic skills and subject matter options, only state approved and licensed exams such as CBES and CSET pass rates will be included in the final SRC. The pass rate data are calculated for 5 different groups: enrolled candidates who completed all non-clinical coursework, which is group 1, other enrolled candidates, which is group 2, program completers for the current year 21-22, which is group 3, program completers for the previous 2 years, 2021, which is group 4, and 2019-20, group 5. The exam pass rate is one data element that is included in the Title II report. Other information and data elements are submitted through the IPRC, which is listed on Table 1, page 2 of the agenda item. Similarly, information and data elements submitted for the SRC are listed on Table 2, page 3 of the agenda item. After teacher preparation programs submit their IPRCs, all of the data will be preloaded into the state report card. The state will then need to complete the rest of the SRC sections for submission, which are included in the agenda item. And speaking of the agenda item, the Title II report starts with Section 1, Program Information on page 4. The section is extensive with numerous data tables with information such as admission requirements like the GPA, supervised clinical hour requirements, and demographic information for total enrollment, including the subset of program completers in 21-22. So let's delve a bit more into the most recent 21-22 data findings on the program section, in the program section. But before then, let me insert real quick about the following selected finding presentation slides. So data presented can be found in the agenda item and the Commission's Title II dashboards. The agenda page and table number, including the link to the specific dashboard page, are available at the bottom of each slide. Since most of the data visualizations in this presentation are pulled directly from the Title II dashboards, you can refer to the figure number to find the data on the specific dashboard page. To access the Title II dashboards, you can click the main Title II webpage link on page 3 of the agenda item, and then click to expand the dashboards and reports section that will display the dashboard URLs. So let's begin with our data findings on how many institutions submitted a report. On agenda item page 4, table 3, and also on the presentation slide, data show that there was a total of 152 reports submitted by 96 institutions for academic year 21-22. And out of the 152 reports, there were 82 traditional program reports, 56 alternative IAG-based university intern reports, and 14 alternative LEA district intern reports submitted. Moving on to clinical experience, which is defined in the Title II as a series of supervised field experiences, including student teaching with PK-12 students that occur as a sequence integral part of the preparation program prior to the candidate becoming the teacher of record. The curriculum policies of each state and its institutions will identify coursework that is clinical and non-clinical. On page 8 of the agenda item and on the right panel of the presentation slide, If we combine clock hours for both prior to student teaching and for student teaching, we can see that 100% of institutions that submitted a traditional route report met the state's mandated 600 hours of clinical experience in 21-22. Moving on to the left panel of the presentation slide, when we separate prior student teaching hours and student teaching hours, data show that in 21-22 for student teaching hours, there were 42 institutions that reported 600 to 699 hours required, and 5 that reported 700 and more hours. For prior student teaching hours, data show that 67 or 87% of institutions reported less than 200 hours. Let's take a look at candidate demographic information next. The gender distribution of total enrollment is available on page 8, table 6A of the agenda item and on the left panel of the presentation slide. Data are also available for the subset of program completers, which is available on page 14, table 6I of the agenda item. Starting in 2018-19, Title II collects the number of total enrollment in which a subset will be the number of program completers. Before we take a look at the gender distribution data, I do want to briefly provide the Title II definition for total enrollment and what is considered a program completer. So total enrollment includes enrolled candidates and program completers. By Title II definition, an enrolled candidate has been admitted, enrolled, and registered in the teacher preparation program and participated in the program during the academic year. Candidates who were enrolled and completed the program during the academic year are counted in the total count of enrolled candidates as well as a subset of program completers. A program completer has met all of the requirements of a state-approved teacher preparation program during the reporting year. A candidate who has or has not been recommended for an initial teaching credential may not be used as a criterion for determining who is a program completer. As a reminder, not all programs enroll candidates on the traditional academic year, September through June. Some programs enroll candidates in January, and some programs enroll candidates monthly. So now let's take a look at the data. When looking at gender distribution for total enrollment by program route in 21-22, in the traditional program, there was 74% of female, 24% of male, and about 1% not reported or reported as other gender. In alternative programs, we can see that there were a slightly higher percentage of males, 27% in the IAG-based route, and 31% in the LEA-based route. Table 6A and on the right panel of the presentation slide displays race ethnicity distribution of total enrollment, including the subset of program completers. In 21-22, the total enrollment for Hispanic Latino of any race in all routes has exceeded the white race by 597 candidates. Specifically, 37% of candidates were Hispanic Latino of any race, 36% identified as white, 8% Asians, 4% African Americans, less than 1% American Indian or Alaska Native, less than 1% Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and 5% identified themselves as belonging to 2 or more races. 9% did not report race or ethnicity. And as previously mentioned, you can find the program completer data starting on page 14, table 6I of the agenda item. When grouping the American Indian or Alaska Native, African Americans, Asians, Hispanic Latino, Native Hawaiian or other Pacific Islander, and 2 or more races categories as non-white, data show that the total enrollment trend in all program routes continues to increase from about 48% in 2018-19 to 56% in 21-22. That's an 8 percentage point difference in 4 years. Similarly, the subset of non-white program completers have also been increasing from 45% in 2018-19 to 55% in 21-22. That's about a 10% percentage point difference. Candidates in the traditional and alternative IAG-based routes have similar ranges. But the alternative LEA-based showed a more dramatic increase of non-white candidates, though the group of candidates is smaller. So for total enrollment, the range was from 47% in 2018-19 to 63% in 21-22. That's a 16 percentage point difference in 4 years. And for program completers, 46% in 2018-19 to 54% in 21-22, an 8 percentage point difference. Additional trend data such as demographics by segment starts back on page 10 with Table 6C. Next on page 13, Table 6G of the agenda item, and also on the presentation slide, the 5-year trend of total enrollment shows a decrease of about 7% between 2017-18 and 21-22. When looking at the prior year percent change, there was a decrease of 12% for the total enrollment between 2021 and 21-22. By program route, data show a 15% decrease for the traditional route, about a 7% decrease for alternative IG-based university intern route, but about a 16% increase for alternative LEA-based district intern route between 2021 and 21-22. Next, let's take a look at the distribution of program completers by subject area starting on agenda item page 16 and on the left panel of the presentation slide. So when looking at traditional route, nearly half of program completers were prepared in elementary education, whereas in alternative routes, nearly half of program completers were prepared in special education. On agenda item page 17 and on the right panel of the presentation slide, data show the distribution of program completers by academic major. More than half of program completers were prepared in the social sciences in both the traditional and alternative routes. The next largest preparation group that makes about 16% is the other academic major. The other includes non-teaching majors, combined majors, non-subject specific majors, and advanced degrees. Moving on to the annual goals section on page 22, table 9A of the agenda item and on the presentation slide, displays the annual goals data for math, science, and special education. More than 4/5 of traditional programs met their goals in math and science. And in contrast, more than 4/5 of alternative programs met their goals in special education. 84% for IEG-based intern and 93% for LEA-based intern programs. Next, the assessment information is available starting on page 35 of the agenda item. Table 14A on page 38 specifically provides the statewide pass rates for program completers by program route for the 2021-22 academic year. The presentation slide displays the 5-year statewide pass rate trend for all exam types for each candidate group. When looking at program completer statewide pass rates, there was a slight decrease in 21-22 for the CBES and the CSET, and an increase for the RICA and TPA in all program routes from the prior year. Aside from the selected findings presented, the Title II report includes additional information such as the credential requirements, standards and criteria, the alternative routes, program performance, and how to determine and assist low-performing institutions to meet the Commission standards of quality and effectiveness. Additional information on teacher shortage and how the state has addressed it so far, and other statewide improvement efforts to improve the quality of the teaching workforce are also provided in the report. These information are included in the SRC for submission to the U.S. Department of Education. To conclude, the Title II is a federal mandate where programs certify and submit their IPRCs in April, but for the 21-22 year, the submission deadline was in May. Following the IPRC submission, the state submits its report to the U.S. Department of Education in October. In this presentation, we highlighted key findings in the 21-22 report, such as the decrease of total enrollment from the prior year, specifically in the traditional and alternative IEG-based routes. However, there was an increase of enrollment in the alternative LEA-based route from the prior year. More than half of total candidates identified themselves as non-white. The trend has shown a steady increase of diversity in candidate enrollment. There was a higher percentage of males enrolled in alternative programs versus the traditional program, and that data have been consistent. Additionally, higher percentage of teachers prepared in special education were enrolled in an alternative program. More than half of teachers held a social sciences academic major, and assessment pass rates varied by route and segment. So all of the data elements reported by the teacher preparation programs are displayed in the Commission's Title II dashboards. The 21-22 data file is available in the appendix for quick access and transparency. And on behalf of the Commission, we do want to thank all of the teacher preparation programs for submitting their information and on time so that the state can continue to report 100% response rate every year. This is an information-only item, and thank you, and we'll be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. We're getting so much information today, and I appreciate that your slides help us see the trends and the highlights, so thank you. Recording Secretary, are there any public comments?
There are no public comments.
Okay, thank you. Pausing for a moment to be sure. And seeing no public comments, the public comment period for this item is now closed. Do commissioners have any questions or comments on this item? Yeah, Commissioner Heredia.
Thank you for this comprehensive report. I really liked reading this one. There's a lot of, and thank you for the tables and all the information here. When I was looking at this, and I put my glasses back on, I was struck by what in your closing comments, you talked about the number of students who enroll in, who work towards a special education, degree, and they are in alternative programs. And also, so it just gives me, again, it raises these questions about there's this tendency to gravitate perhaps over time to those alternative programs. So what implications does that have for other institutions preparing students and also recruiting them? I have an idea about that. Then also the greater enrollment was for students of color were also in these programs and or in the district programs, which are your the district, like the LEAs and the interns. So again, it raises the question, what are the implications for the other institutions, but also what is it about those experiences or those opportunities in those districts that that are attracting these cohorts of students? And so I'm thinking that, one possibility is there is that mentoring. There is the identification of individuals who want to go into teaching, whether it's through a Future Teachers Club, whether it's through just, the classified employee program to get into teaching. But there is that mentoring, and especially in smaller districts, there's that cohort, it's a cohort kind of thing. Like so, but I am now so curious about those two findings. I mean, I really want to know more about that, not today, but just, in the future, really looking at that, because I think that if that is the case, then, we really need to look at the preparation that's occurring in those two arenas and strengthen those the services and the programs that they're in, so that we can continue to grow, because, and exactly, why that's happening. I mean, we can speculate on a lot of, but I'd rather have the real data than rely on speculation about why they are gravitating to those two arenas. So thank you for this report. I appreciate it. It's very comprehensive, lots of data, good information, and information now that has caused me to pause and really think about the preparation of teachers. Thank you.
And I think I see Commissioner Gross. Is that your virtual hand raised?
It is my virtual hand. And Commissioner Heredia, I very much appreciate that you started this conversation around the data around the preparation via alternative routes for our special education candidates. I'm going to ask my questions first, and then I maybe will have a couple more comments. And I have a request right now about maybe at a future meeting, we might delve into this topic a little bit deeper, because I honestly think coming from site levels, we're in a state of panic and crisis around intern credentials for students, especially in special education. And when we think about our prior conversation from our last agenda item about how programs are really struggling to find mentors and placements, when we think about intern candidates, our programs have mentors as part of the agreement to have interns. However, they're very stretched. And so a lot of that mentoring is really informal mentoring by staff at your site. And we all know that education specialists are often in silos by themselves. And so I'm concerned about the availability of informal people. And then I also know from working with colleagues in my district that if you're lucky enough to be at a site with other ed specialists, we're all kind of pulling out our hair because it's now 5 people who have never taught before. And so there's that learning curve. And then there's the overwhelming curve that our veteran teachers would explain to you of the IEP management and the case management process. So I'm really wondering how we might track what is the availability of these informal mentors and what is the strain that this route of preparation is placing on retention of our current education specialists. So I think I have like a dual retention question about that. Like, what is the retention of our current staff who are already veteran teachers, and the impact of this mentoring that whether you're in a fortunate situation and you might be getting compensated for it, there's still only so many hours in the day. I sat yesterday with a new teacher for over an hour just talking about the present levels page of an IEP, right? That's one IEP. This person could case manage technically up to 28 kids. And that's just one page of a 20-page document, right? My wondering from this report is the next time you bring this report to us, might it be possible for, and I know that you brought a similar report to us early in the spring, so maybe like when this comes back in the spring, table 7A had the teachers prepared by subject area on page 2C16. And it's, 94% of our candidates right now are enrolled in these intern programs in 21-22 for special education. And so I really want to know what the trend is from that. Like what does the past 5 years look like in this area? And how might we really kind of dive in and support our schools and our children with this? So I love alternative routes for folks. I don't want to come across as criticizing the alternative route, but I have never seen as much interns and STIPs and veteran people leaving as I have this year. And it's really like, I have like, my heart is like in my throat right now because this data concerns me a lot. So I very much appreciate the clarity that you brought it to us, Fifi. And I'm sorry, I feel like I'm a downer, but the numbers I think speak for themselves.
Thank you, Commissioner Gross. And I was looking for hands. I'm Commissioner Cotton. And then while I'm listening to Commissioner Cotton, what Commissioner Gross just said has Thank you for expressing that, and don't feel sorry for being a downer. I think the things that you're bringing up are really important things that we do need to address. So don't apologize. Commissioner Cotton.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Heredia and Commissioner Gross. I think we share similar sentiments. I'm just wondering, as we better understand our crisis of our teacher shortage, is it possible to see data that further disaggregates by demographics? So we dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So who is going into which credential areas? That may then be able to help us understand why and how do we recruit and what is our focus? What are we targeting? That just may help us, again, understand the problem better and then be able to address it in more meaningful ways. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Grandel-Shire.
Thank you to Fifi and Kara for this very rich report as always. I was sitting here reflecting and then whispering to Executive Director Sandy a little bit. The data that shows that candidates of color, there's a higher percentage in alternative routes is not unique to California. This is a national pattern, a national trend, and this commission always grapples with these issues, and then we have some alternatives about what to do about it. And so I want to commend the commissioners for once again reviewing these documents so seriously. And I also want to tell Commissioner Gross, don't ever apologize for making it real for this commission, and for Commissioner Heredia for raising this issue. And so one of the things that Executive Director and Sandy and I will talk about is this an opportunity for a special study session or a deep dive or some other process by which we come to understand this situation in a deeper way, because it not only informs us, it informs the public that is listening to us, and we can certainly work very closely with our IHE partners in thinking this through a little bit. So I really, again, want to commend us all for this.
Commissioner De La Torre.
I'm sorry, it just popped into my mind. With all the new candidates coming in, do we have any data on how they're being supported? Because like Commissioner Gross mentioned, I know especially for our exceptional needs specialists, they do have a lot of mandates. There's district mandates, state mandates, federal mandates. I mean, there's a lot. And so I'm worried that these teachers are being funneled into these positions without the appropriate supports, because those reports it's a lot.
Commissioner Pavri.
Thank you. So I'm just again, I think the item that jumped out at me the most was exactly what Commissioners Heredia and Gross identified around special education candidates. And to add to this issue, as I speak with our campuses across the CSU, special ed seems to be the area that has been the most difficult to recruit for, and particularly for our extensive support need programs. So this is, I really like the idea of us tackling this as a crisis. I have one ray of hope, if you will, and that is I am really interested in seeing how the increase in residency stipends will rebalance maybe some of our candidates in special education continuing in residency programs rather than becoming interns and teachers of record right away. So I'm hopeful that, we can, I know that it'll take some time for us to get some longitudinal data on that, but I'm hopeful that that might be a way to turn things around a little bit. Thanks.
Commissioner Simmons.
I agree with the sentiments that are being expressed a lot, except for I do want to point out that if those candidates choose to go into a traditional route rather than an internship, then K-12 students will not be served by any teacher at all.
I think Commissioner Simmons and I had the same thought at the same moment, and not for the first time. This is, these data, I think there's the boiling frog syndrome. The water just continues to boil and the frog dies versus drop the frog in and he jumps out. The water's been boiling for a while. These data haven't been different for a long time. And the intern pathway is a relief valve for teacher shortage. If you've got the infrastructure, the mentoring, the program support that somebody needs in this incredibly complex assignment called special education. And an intern is likely to be better prepared and better supported than someone on a PIP or a STIP or a rotating substitute credential. But we're staffing these classrooms in ways that are substandard in most cases. And I appreciated the comment about having 5 or more, special ed interns on a single site without anybody who's fully credentialed who can really provide. I mean, that's a large mentoring load. But it's just, this is a blaring symptom, a glaring symptom, if you will, of teacher shortages in special education being chronic and ongoing and truly problematic. So I really appreciate the sidebar the chair and I had about doing a study session on this. I worry about admiring the problem with very little that we can do to resolve the problem. I totally agree, Commissioner Pavri, with with your hope that the residency pathway being better funded will create an incentive and an opportunity for people to be a resident in someone else's classroom, but they're going to meet an employer who needs them in their own classroom the day they enroll. And so this is a problem. The legislature took up a number of bills last year to look at how can we create entry-level salary opportunities at the residency level so that candidates are not faced with a Hobson's choice of do this and live in my car, or do this as an intern and get, get a classroom and a salary. So, the budget situation is not looking particularly bright next year. Legislative analyst has their report out, but this is a problem that I don't know. Time doesn't make it better at the moment. So anyway, just sharing some comments.
Thank you. I had Commissioner okay. Commissioner Davis, and then back to Chair Grenelshire.
I just wanted to make a comment on your sidebar. And it is about funding, but funding in a different way. I've brought to this body before my experience as being a mentor teacher for countless numbers of student teachers over the years, and the compensation for someone in my position as the mentor is almost nothing. I believe San Jose State pays $75 per semester for me. And then I'm teaching 6 periods, and then I have an extra person in my class that I'm teaching on top of that. And then being the union president and being the, all of the things that Commissioner Klatt had mentioned before, there is no real incentive unless you're doing the noble thing and you want to expand the profession. There is no economic incentive to do the work. And there's no extra prep period to assist this person, for example, which doesn't necessarily cost a lot, but it does cost some. And I'm looking at Commissioner Simmons when I say that, from the HR perspective. But I do know that if that compensation model changes, I know a lot of what we have been suggesting around the table earlier with how we mentor and how we guide folks into the profession, that might close the gap a bit and provide more folks who want to step up to the plate. It's not, and I agree that more money needs to go into the internship programs in that way, but also as an induction coach, the same thing. It's like, it's one of those labors of love that doesn't pay much or at all. But then in the induction program, I don't know if most folks know that, but as an induction mentor, I have to co-enroll in school with the candidate, and I have to go through school with the candidate, and I have to do homework with the candidate. And while I don't get college credit for that, I also don't get compensated for that. So, it's a lot of extra work. It is an extra burden without any kind of prep time for it. And I wanted to also, while I have the floor a bit, thank you all for the robust program and the demographic data. We appreciate that.
Chair Grano-Shire, did you, and then I have Commissioner Simmons, and then I'm going to raise my.
So I have two comments. And I just forgot. Oh, but the first comment was I would be curious if in fact we move forward with some special deep dive or study session. I'm curious about the impact of dual certified teachers on this problem. And so we've talked about inclusive teacher preparation around this table. And I know graduates of that program get scooped up immediately if they're not hired even before they complete their program. And I'm really wondering about their assignments and how that either exacerbates the problem we're talking about or helps it. So that is something I'm curious about. And then Carol Basile is dean at Arizona State University, the College of Education. She's a really wise administrator, and she talks about what we're talking about as a workforce development problem. It's not just about the teacher shortage. And so if we take this developmental lifespan view of an educator from, their interest in becoming a teacher to them becoming the mentor teacher or the building curriculum supervisor, whatever, I would like us to think about it in that way as well.
And I just want to echo what Commissioner Davis was saying. And I think it's the economic incentives are, I don't want to dismiss those, but I think it comes down to time. There's only so many hours in a day. And I know that this isn't the study session yet for that, but I would totally support the study session for that. But I think the purpose of us having these annual reports, right, are for policymakers, not just those of us at this table, but other policymakers to think about legislative changes and policy changes. And I think that this issue does need to be a spotlight needs to be shown on it. And one thing, and I'll just throw out there this in advance of the study session, and maybe I'm getting ahead of the game, but I was thinking as I was listening that I was on Tuesday of this week, I was at a memorial service for a teacher I'd worked with for a long time who had retired a bit ago. And as we were all celebrating his life as an educator, it was like this reunion of a cohort of teachers who all started teaching together like 30-ish some odd years ago. But in the room, I was struck by how many educators and administrators in that room had retired within the last 5 years. And one of the echoes I heard was that, yes, they need retirement. They were ready because, as we all know, this is an exhausting profession. But there was also this bit of sadness about still feeling like they weren't done and had something to offer. And I know that this would require things to happen and other things to happen. But I'm thinking, especially with what Commissioner Gross was saying, that this is a crisis at this point. And can we tap into some of our very, very recently retired educators to help, even if as a temporary, maybe to bridge the gap? Because I think there's people out there with great expertise who now do have the time that they didn't have before. So I'm throwing that out there. Commissioner Brown.
When we have this study session, I'd like to bring in the California Early Childhood Mentor Program in terms of this issue that includes not only it gives mentors time, money, and people to, if it's a worthy project, it's worth doing well. And if you're going to do it well, you need time, money, and people. But the California Early Childhood Mentor Program not only gives those mentor teachers a stipend, it can't increase the hours of the day, but it also has a community of practice that's supported financially. And it's now creating an opportunity for retired teachers to be mentors. So that I'm just offering that down the road a piece.
Any other commissioners? And I'm checking my virtual hands. Seeing none. Executive Director Sandy, did you?
Say one last thing.
Yes, please.
I'm really appreciating, I think this comment already came up, but this kind of data sheds light in corners where we need to look. And so I appreciate you keeping your eyes wide open as we look through the lens of data, recognizing it's not always a perfect frame, but it really is important for us to have these kind of data in order to understand what's happening. Otherwise, it's invisible and nobody can do anything about it. So thank you.
I'll just end with, we've heard, Fifi and I have been taking copious notes, and we've heard a lot of your wishes and asks around data. And you might be surprised to find some of these that show up in the teacher supply report, because we have a little more latitude there than in Title II. So we've been listening to you, and we will do our best to bring you some of your asks and wishes and wants.
And I'm pausing because I think, is there a virtual hand that I can't see? Oh, thank you. And for some reason, I wasn't, your screen, the hand was blending in with your background and I didn't see it. So I apologize for that. Yes, Commissioner Wicks.
Thank you. I just want to say and echo what a lot of the commissioners have been saying. This information for me as a student is really insightful. Excuse me, as a student on the traditional route, I wasn't even aware of all the alternative routes. And I think it's just really interesting. One thing that stood out to me, I'm looking at the demographic information for program completers and just looking at the groups of students that already have like low percentages, like the American Indian and Alaska Native, Black or African American, and also one more, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander. I see that those trends, I think another commissioner might have pointed this out already. In the traditional route, their numbers are much lower than the alternative, looks like the LEA based route. And I'm just really curious to know more information on like how they're, as to why that is being shown in these specific groups, whereas like other other race and ethnicities is kind of flipped. It's less likely they'll complete it in one route than the traditional route. So I think it'd just be really interesting to learn more about how we're supporting these students in these programs, and even going deeper into seeing like where these students are located in California, like whether they're in rural areas and urban areas, and how they're choosing the programs they decide to go into. So yeah, once again, thank you for this information. I'm excited to learn more about this.
Thank you. And Commissioner Heredia?
Throw something out real quick. One of the trends I saw in here was the number comparison. I was comparing the Hispanic, Latino with white students in the program. And typically, for many, many years, at least throughout my career, those percentages would have been reversed. There would have, because 75%, approximately 75% white women in the United States are teachers. And so, now we're looking at, California. But my point is that when I'm thinking about just the rise of Latino students going into teaching, I'm wondering if the incentive is dual immersion in schools, bilingual schools that propel them to go into the profession because they see themselves in those schools. They see their colleagues who look like them. There are people who look like them. And it's also a way that those schools also affirm their language and culture. So I don't know. That's just something else I'm kind of thinking about. Is that the incentive for the rise in the numbers there? I'm looking at, some data here, just, the authorization of bilingual teachers and, has that increased? And it looks like it's increased over, since 2015, we have data here. And so I don't know. I'm wondering if the element of affirming where students go, where they do their internships. If they were in programs that affirmed who they were to a greater degree in the communities in which they teach, would we have higher numbers? So if you go into low, schools where students are less prepared, have less resources, students of color, finding adults to go into teaching who are, to help them just prepare to become teachers in those communities. I'm wondering over time if that wouldn't be the push, the focus has to kind of shift. So what does that mean? Again, it means another layer of, in teacher ed programs. It's not just what's expected. Now you've got to look at the preparation of affirming students who are in the programs and finding matches, for them in their communities to do the teaching. So just a thought. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Seeing none. Thank you so much. Clearly this information got us all thinking and questioning, and there's still a lot for us to take from it and hopefully move forward. So thank you so much. This is an information item. No action is needed at this time. Thank you, Ms. Mendoza and Ms. Lau. And having no additional items today, I recess the Educator Preparation Committee until tomorrow.
Commissioners, can we be back here at 1:30? Does that work for everyone? All right, I'll see you at 1:30. I need to make an announcement. Don't leave yet. Sorry. I will now recess the general session. Members of the commission will go into closed session. The general session will reconvene at 8:30 tomorrow morning. But Commissioner